Good evening, everybody, and welcome to the Education, Housing and the Children's Education Housing Overview Scrutiny Committee. James, do we have any apologies?
Through you, Chair, there are no apologies for non-attendance. We have had some changes to the committee membership since the previous meeting, so I don't know if you want me to mention those now. So, since the previous meeting, Councillors Furman and Owens have joined as Reform UK members, and also Councillor Aldridge in place of Councillor Tolley as a Liberal Democrat member.
Thank you. Declarations of interest. Do we have any committee members? I take that as a no. Moving on to the minutes, can we confirm that the minutes are correct from the 20th of October meeting?
Sorry, through you, Chair, there has been one amendment requested in advance of the meeting. The minutes do record that Councillor Ware was attending as a substitute for Councillor Tolley, but the request has been made that Councillor Ware be recorded as present as a substitute. So the committee is asked to approve the minutes subject to that amendment.
Okay.
Councillor Harris and I were also present, and we're not on the list as also in attendance.
So subject to that, is the committee happy to agree the minutes?
Yeah. Subject to that, is the committee happy to agree the minutes? Thank you. So moving on, I would like to just remind everybody that this meeting is webcast live, so can we all please use our microphones at all times when we are speaking? Can everybody ensure that your phones are turned off or turned to silence? I would also like to welcome our new councillors on this committee. We have Councillor Aldridge, Councillor Owens and Councillor Furman. We also have a very full agenda with the call-in and the items that we have to get through, the 3 items further to that, and our work programme, etc. So I would like to just remind the committee if we could all be brief and concise in our comments and our contributions. Thank you. Item 5, we have the call-in, and first of all we have our speaker, Mrs. Jean Lineker from the Public Gallery. I invite you forward. So, yeah, whatever's easiest.
Thanks, James. Right, we're on. My name's Jean Lineker, and I live in housing. I'm going to cop the two together, 5 and 6, within 5 minutes if I can. I've had a lot of dampness in my property. What I need, let me go down the list for item 5 first. I need to know how many on the waiting list for a start. And another thing is, how many are on the waiting list so far? Because last time I heard was that 9,000 people. I don't know whether that's true, but I need to find out for myself. Now, I'm in agreement with housing coming over to WNC. I want that very much, like it used to be. The problem is we don't know how many electricians we've got, how many plumbers we've got. I've not recently had 2 air conditioning things that were damp during the dampness that I've had. The dampness that I've had, I've got pictures, and I'll try and find them after the meeting to give to the chair, if that's all right with the chair. The problem is, one manager has left. Tony is retired. How many managers have you got as well? The problem is there's not enough workers. And I'm sorry, I'm going to say this, I'm truthful. Too many chiefs and not enough Indians. And I'm sorry that I've had to say that, because I tried to speak to the chair about that when I went to a meeting on housing, and he walked away. So he was polite, he was good, but there's people that are on the higher up, or that have got housing themselves. They don't want to tell you anything. And I think they should tell the residents what's going on, and they don't. There's coffee mornings to find out about your rent, your rates, but we ain't got one, sorry. But it's not my problem. That's my councillor's problem. I've been trying for ages. So what I'm trying to say is you need to find out a lot before you take over. How many plumbers, how many electricians, and how many actual workers are coming over? And how many rent officers have you got? How many wardens have you got within WNC? There's a lot to cover for fly tipping, I'm telling you. Especially in Drywell Court. And I've been on to Andy this afternoon about it. That's why I'm a bit late, and I went shopping. Sorry. I wish I hadn't done. But that is why I was late. I'm just fed up with MPH in general, because I don't like dampness, and I don't want it this year. Sorry. That's it.
Thank you, Mrs. Lineker. Thank you, Mrs. Lineker. We do hear your concerns, and no, you shouldn't have to be living in damp, and that your concerns will be addressed in due course. I'm going to invite James now to summarise the background and purpose of the call-in process.
Thank you, Chair. So this is the statutory function that enables an executive decision to be called in for scrutiny before being enacted. In this case, the decision in question clearly relates to the Cabinet decision on the 11th of November regarding options appraisal for the future management of West Northamptonshire Council's housing stock. The papers included with the agenda today set out pages 11 to 13, the extract from the Constitution relating to the call-in process, the call-in notice that was submitted to the monitoring officer is at pages 15 to 16, and then page 17 onwards is the original Cabinet report. So, in summary, the process to be followed by the committee tonight is to hear firstly from Councillor Lister as the call-in originator, effectively the lead sponsor for the call-in. Councillors Sally Keeble and Christine Ware, the first of whom was call-in signatory, have also asked to address the committee on the call-in. After that, there's then an opportunity for the committee to hear comments from the Cabinet Member for Housing and relevant service officers, and then moving from that into a discussion by the committee of the arguments made in the call-in and what the committee's views on those are, and the potential resolution by the committee. And in terms of the potential resolutions that can arise from this, essentially, in this case, they are two. So if the committee has concerns about the original decision, having heard the arguments for and against tonight, then it can refer the decision back to the Cabinet for reconsideration, setting out the nature of the committee's concerns and any alternative recommendations that the committee proposes. On the other hand, if the committee effectively has no concerns about the original decision, then it can resolve to take no further action. If the committee reaches that resolution, then the original decision taken by the Cabinet takes effect immediately. So I'm happy to take any questions, Chair, and we also have the monitoring officer with us about the background to the call-in and the process to be followed.
Here we go again. Sorry.
It's like musical microphones.
Thank you. There we go. Thank you. It was really just to remind members that this evening what you're looking at is whether the matter should be referred back. You are not, if you like, taking the decision again. So you're not going into that, that sort of realm. You're not reconsidering everything that the Cabinet took in terms of the decision. You're actually giving consideration as to whether or not, based on the information that will be presented to you, the arguments that will be presented by Councillor Lister, whether or not you feel that actually the matter should go back to Cabinet for reconsideration, or actually whether there is no further action required. But you aren't actually retaking the decision. You're not going to look at it from a point of view of, I'm going to retake the decision and determine whether or not I would have taken a different decision. It is purely whether you want to refer it back or for the decision to stand as is.
Can I ask just for clarification, because I think our understanding was that that inadequate information was supplied to the Scrutiny Committee to be able to scrutinise the decision properly. And we were, the last time when we called an emergency meeting, we were supposed to have somebody present from the Treasury to actually give us information on the financial situation, and nobody turned up. So we didn't have any financial papers, and we've had as a scrutiny committee, to do our proper due diligence as a scrutiny function, we weren't given the information, and we're frustrated in that.
Okay, Chair, if I can. So to clarify, the call-in kind of process is different to the work that Overview and Scrutiny do routinely. So I know that, for example, a working group has been set up to look specifically at this matter, and I know that information has been provided and will be provided again from our Director of Communities and Opportunities, etc., and the housing team. The call-in process itself is very, very narrow in terms of what you're looking at is based on the information that is before you and will be presented to you by Councillor Lister and any other members from that call-in. Actually, was enough information contained within that report? Are you satisfied that the decision was made correctly? And if not, you refer it back. We don't get into looking at all the financial data. We don't get into whether or not, as an Overview and Scrutiny Committee, you felt that you had all the financial information to be able to properly scrutinise it. It is a very narrow scope that is provided to you for the call-in process. So they're two separate things, if I will. I appreciate that it's almost easy, isn't it, to say, well, actually, as a working group or as a committee, we were expecting additional information, but you almost need to put that to one side and say, actually, just looking at the call-in process, what do we want to do with this decision? Do we want to send it back to the decision maker, or do we want to allow it to stand? And the fact that you feel that you haven't had sufficient information as a working group or as a committee in relation to the proposal is a different matter altogether.
Except it means that I could vote now and say, refer it back because we didn't have enough information. Yeah, OK, we'll listen.
And that's OK, but I think we need to go through the process, don't we? So we need to allow the call-in originator to present their kind of thoughts and feelings and other members, and then we go from there. Thank you. Pass that.
I'm going to invite the originator of the call-in, Councillor Dan Lister, to speak now.
Thank you, Chair. Members, let me be clear from the outset. This isn't about the principle of bringing back the services from MPH. This is about the proper scrutiny of the process, and has all of the information that's needed to make that decision been presented. And what we need to see is the financial transparency, the risk assessment, the governance assurances. Those are all that are needed that our 11,500 tenants need and deserve. Of those, we've got three concerns. First, the numbers that have already been mentioned. The Cabinet papers state that the full financial appraisal and cost-benefit analysis has been conducted. Scrutiny asked for it on the 30th of October. The Section 151 officer committed to providing it. Cabinet met on the 11th of November, but as far as I'm aware, those documents are yet to be seen. We're being asked to approve dissolving a company with 350 staff, managing £67 million a year, responsible for thousands of homes without seeing this business case. And we should be especially worried because other councils have made savings claims that didn't work out. When Haringey bought their Almo in-house, they promised savings of £500,000 a year. Later, they admitted they didn't think that levels of that saving were possible, and that the same insourcing at other boroughs hadn't generated those savings either. We need to see the breakdown of the £1.6 million costs. Where is the 30-year HRA projection showing when the savings will appear? We need to see the contingency planning. We need to understand the impact on the other services that we've got. And if these documents exist, they should be public. Second, the scale of what we're taking on. We're adding an entire department with all the complexity and the risks that this brings. The Cabinet papers mention efficiencies and savings from cutting duplication. It may be true, but what about the risks? What happens what happens to the other services during this disruption? Do we have the capacity to take this on whilst dealing with the existing pressures in children's, adults and other services? When Tower Hamlets bought their Almo in-house, an LGA peer review warned that they needed to properly assess the impact on their finances and learn from their experience with waste services, where the organisation wasn't adequately prepared from HR, IT and facilities perspectives. By February 2024, the government ordered a best value inspection concerned with their proposed savings of over £30 million, which could be undermined by the insourcing of services that might require additional revenue and capital investment. Insourcing creates demands and capacity, and if you haven't properly assessed whether you can cope, you risk making things worse, not better. The problems come with the service when you bring it in, and you need capacity to fix them. We can't weigh risk versus advantage without the detailed analysis. Third, we already have a C3 judgment. We self-referred in September 24 and got a C3 for data quality and landlord health and safety compliance. We're not starting from strength, we're starting from a position where the regulator has already found serious failings needed significant improvement. What's happening nationally should concern us. The number of ALMOs has fallen from over 70 at their peak to around 30 today. Councils have been bringing services in-house for years, and the same things keep happening. Data problems turn out to be deeper than expected. Compliance weaknesses emerge, transition costs run higher, staff leaves, savings come slower. The regulator and housing ombudsman have said repeatedly that structural change doesn't fix the systemic issues like asset management, safety compliance and data integrity. Newcastle closed Your Homes Newcastle in July 24 and got a C3 6 months later. Nottingham brought housing in-house in 2023 and got a C3 in January this year. Haringey insourced in June 22 and within 13 months faced a damning housing ombudsman investigation. Croydon dissolved its ALMO after serious maladministration findings. It found massive problems with stock surveys and repairs data, and over the past year has had to spend more than £6 million addressing damp, mould and disrepair. Bristol bought its ALMO in-house and discovered gaps in asbestos records and electrical compliance. Birmingham disbanded its ALMO and admitted its data was incomplete and inaccurate. Newcastle closed one of the biggest ALMOs in the country, 26,000 homes. 6 months later, the regulator found over 1,800 overdue repairs, 1,000 damp and mould cases of work outstanding, half the communal areas and a quarter of homes without up-to-date electrical certificates, and more than 850 overdue fire safety actions. A lot of these were the council's responsibility, not the ALMO. Allocations policy, stock surveys, domestic abuse policy, rent setting. Newcastle shut the ALMO without sorting these, and they all came out during the regulatory review. We've also got compliance issues. We've got a C3 judgment. We can see what happened to Newcastle, Nottingham, Haringey, Croydon, Bristol, Birmingham, Tower Hamlets. None of them had C3 when they started. They got them after, or discovered problems that were far worse than they realised. We're proposing to transfer 350 MPH staff under TUPE. What if experienced people leave during transition? What happens to all the knowledge about the complex estates, vulnerable tenants, problem properties? The Cabinet papers say TUPE will protect terms and conditions, but that doesn't guarantee people will stay, and it doesn't capture their knowledge before they go. Our Cabinet papers don't analyse how we'll manage transition alongside our existing improvement work. There's no risk assessment of regulator intervention during transition. There's no evidence the regulator has been consulted on the timeline. The papers just say the RSH might inspect during 25-26, as if it's routine rather than a serious risk. It is clear weak data becomes visible when services transfer. Stock surveys, asbestos records, electrical testing, gas servicing, damp and mould information turn out incomplete or unreliable. Councils underestimate the time and cost. Transition risk is high, disruption is common. Repair backlogs grow, complaints rise, staff leave, knowledge is lost. Regulatory scrutiny increases. The regulator looks closely at councils after an ALMO closes. Councils with weak data or compliance get adverse findings. That's the pattern. That's what we risk. We need to produce and publish the financial appraisal with HRA modelling signed off by the Section 151 officer. Get written confirmation from the regulator that they've been consulted and they've satisfied it won't derail our C3 improvement programme. We also need to establish a task and finish group now to scrutinise the plans before we go ahead, not just watch afterwards with power to require information and report back. This affects 11,500 properties, 350 staff and 67 million a year. Bringing services in-house might be right. We've got to get the process right. Bringing housing in-house doesn't resolve underlying compliance or data issues. Councils frequently face increased regulatory intervention after closing an ALMO. Efficiencies take years to appear. Without clear financial plans and risk assessments, transitions put tenants and councils at risk. This is the experience from other councils who have done this already. We've already got the C3. Let's not follow their path. Thank you.
Thank you. I'm going to invite Councillor Keeble to come forward and speak.
Thank you very much, Chair. I'm not sure how long we've got, but I won't be as long as Dan, although I have to say that I did actually agree with almost all of what he said, and I'll try not to repeat it. There's three particular areas which I want to focus on, which I think are really important that Cabinet scrutinises with much greater care, and which I don't think either Cabinet, from the papers that I saw at least, or the full Council got the full information on. And that's irrespective of the decision they make, but in terms of making a decision that was capable of being carried through and working successfully. The first one is that there wasn't the information provided about exactly how the transfer would improve the housing services. I think, as Councillor Lister has shown, it's not the structure necessarily that determines the success of the services. And housing in Northampton has been run in-house, it's been run out of house, it's now, the proposal's now to bring it back in-house. Any structure can work. What we haven't seen is exactly how this one is going to. We haven't seen about where the staff will be deployed, about how they'll be deployed. I understand that the person who's in charge of MPH currently is leaving. That will be a loss of knowledge. And we need to know how that's going to happen so you can see clearly how the services are going to be improved. Second, there's an issue about asset management. There's a little point in the papers that went to Cabinet about the fact that some of the stock might not be capable of being improved under the Decent Homes standards. It doesn't say which stock, and we don't actually know which stock is going to be the council might want to retain in-house and which it might actually want to dispose of because it's not capable of being repaired. It's well known which of the estates are particularly problematic. One of them is obviously the flats in Drayton Walk, which still 15 years on has got stalactites growing from the ceilings because of the appalling water leakage compounded with whatever sediments or chemicals are contained in the building. And I think that the council should have known at the time it was taking this decision, not just how much stock Northampton Partnership Homes has, but how much would be coming back in-house and how much of it might actually have to be disposed of either before or afterwards. The third point, and this is my biggest concern about it, is the financial information about the capital spend. Councillor Lister referred to the 30-year plan for Northampton Partnership Homes. There is one, and I'm very grateful to the portfolio holder and Jane Carr for sharing it with me. It was obviously shared in confidence, and I don't intend to breach that. But I would just say that looking at the figures, it's absolutely clear that for West Northants Council to be able to carry out all the repairs that are needed for decent homes, for AWAB's law, and for the replacement for the cladding, which has been required after Grenfell Tower, is going to soak up most of the capital which is needed for the new build as well. And the impact then on the waiting list, and I think if I'm right, it's 2,000 live applications and 3,000 waiting to be assessed. So it's not the 9,000 that Jean was talking about, but it's still absolutely an astonishing number of people. The impact on that is going to be worse, and that is going to impact on the housing department and in turn on the council. So it's not at all clear that the Cabinet or the council got sight of all those figures. Perhaps it's inappropriate because obviously those are figures that belong to the company, which is about to be wound down. But certainly the council should be aware of the financial liabilities that are coming down the track when it takes all these properties back in house. So, in conclusion, I'd just say I don't think that either the Cabinet or the Council got the information it needed, either about housing management and how it's going to improve the housing services, what it's going to do about the assets it's got, which of those it's going to keep and which of those it will have to dispose of, and thirdly, how it's going to manage an extraordinarily challenging capital programme at a time of having to catch up with chronic disrepair in the housing and also meet acute housing need. And on that basis, I think it should go back and be much more clearly scrutinised by Cabinet and by Council. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Keeble. I'm going to invite Councillor Ware to come forward and speak to the committee.
Thank you, Chair. In the Cabinet report, item 5.5 said a full and financial appraisal and cost-benefit analysis has been conducted to ensure that the financial implications of the transition are thoroughly understood and managed. This helps in making informed decisions about resource allocation and investment in housing services. We haven't seen this analysis even now. I subbed on the last Scrutiny Committee and attended the workshop that followed on the 30th of October. Councillor Herring has already said that we've asked a number of times now for this data, and I agree with her that this Scrutiny Committee has not had the information it needs to scrutinise. What I will say is the workshop on the 30th of October was a productive one in my view. It was a good conversation, and a thank you to Councillor Hastie for contributing to that. It was very useful. We did agree at that workshop that we would establish a task and finish group to monitor the transition and report to Scrutiny. And we said that we wanted to schedule regular updates to Scrutiny throughout the transition period in order to maintain transparency and public accountability. Now, on the 11th of November, I asked for information about the terms of reference for that task and finish group, and I also asked for the makeup of this group. This is key to providing transparency and an opportunity for proper cross-party working. We still haven't had that information. I was sort of hoping that this committee would have had that presented to them this evening to allow us to progress forward. My view is, had we started the task and finish group work, we probably wouldn't be having this conversation, because actually we would be in a position to be able to scrutinise and understand where things are at. So I would just encourage the committee to really do what it's agreed to do, get the task and finish group up working, refer this back to Cabinet for decision, give us the information we need, and we can move this forward in an open and transparent way. Thank you, Chair.
Through you, Chair, sorry, just as a point of clarification, there is a set of draft terms of reference for Scrutiny Task and Finish panel in tonight's agenda, page 111 onwards. So I'm slightly, at the risk of I'm slightly misunderstanding Councillor Ware's point that it hasn't been shared.
Yes, and obviously it is a proposal, and we are looking for members of this scrutiny to join that task and finish group, which will be meeting on a quarterly basis. I'm going to invite Councillor Hastie and Jane Card now to address the committee.
Sorry, excuse me. Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Councillor Lister. Thank you, Councillor Keeble, and thank you, Councillor Ware, for your presentations tonight, which are very in-depth. I would like to reserve the right, Chair, to come back and comment, but what I'm going to do now for the benefits of, I think, time and expertise, I'm going to ask the Director of Communities and Opportunities, Jane Carr, to respond on the intricacies of the number and some of the deeper attributes. Thank you.
Thank you. So with regards to the figures, to explain where we are, the decision that was brought into Cabinet was made on the basis of the legal responsibility for WNC in terms of the regulator of social housing that was brought into force from April 24. The figures that we are talking about in that cost-benefit analysis is the cost of bringing it back in. To be very clear, at the moment, the delivery model will not change until we do a full review of the target operating model, which needs to be done once the decision is made. So there are some immediate savings that are contained in the Cabinet paper of 86,000. It was not a financial decision. It was made on the basis of the legal responsibility and our ability to drive the change that the regulator is expecting from us. So the 1.6 million is in there. We do have the individual figures under that, which we're happy to share through the business case and options appraisal, but all of those were rolled up into the Cabinet paper with the full information. With regards to any figures around the decent homes that were mentioned or any of the other delivery model, they are part of the HRA budget. So the HRA budget, an updated version, will obviously come to Cabinet on December the 22nd. So all of that information on the projections, what is needed, everything from the stock condition survey will be in there, but it's not part of the options appraisal. With regards to savings, we were really mindful of exactly what Councillor Lister is describing in terms of over-egging savings and saying figures that we couldn't adhere to. So actually what we've done is held back on that until we can do a proper review of the operating model. You're absolutely correct that when you take something back in-house, and as many of you will know, my experience with the local government reform programme and that large-scale transformation is exactly that. You find things that you don't know about. So we are mindful of that, which is why we've done to April 27 to give us a chance to really understand exactly what the delivery is, make sure that we understand all the issues. But the other thing you said that was absolutely correct is those issues are there regardless, and we have to deal with them. We are the landlord, we are legally responsible, and so that's why we're asking for the decision to be made, so that we are closer to the ability to be able to do that. As we go through the assessment, we will make sure that we review all of the services alongside our own, see where efficiency can be made, and we will absolutely bring that into scrutiny along the way. We can provide any information ahead of that we have that sits behind this, and like I say, I'll share the business case and options appraisal, so you've got that. But happy for scrutiny to ask for any questions or any information to be brought through. But with regards to the paper, any information that is in those, the business case and options appraisal was rolled up into the Cabinet paper at a high level, and the information sitting underneath that is just a more detailed version of exactly what was in there. So, Charlie, did you want to add something to that?
Yes, thank you, Chair. I think what I wanted to add to this is from a portfolio holder's point of view, working with a very diligent, hard-working team that have looked top down, and they've eaten, slept and breathed this for the last, well, longer than I've been here, and certainly last year as well. From our involvement onwards, in July of this year, I've endeavoured to be probably more collaborative than certainly some of my bosses might like. Not suggesting that that's not the right decision. It's just that we've offered to be collaborative all the way through this process. And this included my offer in the July Cabinet for members to come forward with if they had any suggestions, ideas, a better model, a better way forward, and or any questions. The only real members that sort of came forward in any official sort of capacity were Councillor McCord and Councillor Keeble. And so there wasn't really much take up on my offer of openness and transparency. I do emphasise that does not mean that we haven't been transparent with the numbers we've got. We attended and presented to scrutiny in October, facilitating an additional workshop prior to Cabinet for scrutiny to ask further questions. This was done on a voluntary basis. It was accepted and it was right to do so. We've agreed to a task and finish group basically being set up going forward prior to scrutiny on an ongoing basis as the transition goes through its whole process. And so the whole programme will be subject to task and finish groups and also obviously scrutiny at the behest of the committee. Officers attended also an additional briefing with the Conservative group members, including the leader, where additional questions and concerns could be raised. So the cost of bringing MPH back in-house and any associated known savings were contained in the Cabinet paper. There were no additional costs to the revenue associated with the bringing back in decision. So just to make that clear, there is nothing in the option appraisal or business case that would have changed this decision. All the high-level data from these reports were included in the Cabinet report. I would like to just come on to about other things, as Jane alluded to. This paper is about bringing NPH back in, not the budget for delivery. and any questions sort of regarding AWABs or Decent Homes and Decent Homes 2 are not relevant to this paper and should be discussed in conjunction with the HRA budget that will come to Cabinet in December. I would remind everyone that tenants voted 6-1 in favour of bringing this back in. We are, as you know, required to take on board the views of our tenants under the regulations from the Regulator of Social Housing. So this call-in, however, without saying we're not welcome to scrutiny and transparency in working with the opposition and across the board, means that we've had to post the engagement events because with staff at MPH to give them, or start to give them, the answers that they are looking for. Can't do that until this is resolved. And that impacts the trust and relationships we're building with them, especially at this time of year following a budget and coming up to Christmas. So I know that's not the key issue, but it is an issue that needs to be taken into account. And I'll also firmly state that I've been with this now 5 months. I think it is probably one of the biggest things that we'll do in our tenure, my tenure. It is significantly important, and I think ongoing forward, we work together collaboratively, using the expertise of councillors with more experience than I've got, but working in collaboration rather than, shall we say, grandstanding or trying to score points. This is about the residents and where they live, and we'd welcome that ongoing. And I have really learned that the only thing that really matters in all this is the residents. Thank you, Chair. I think, Jade, did you?
Sorry, I just wanted to add a couple of other things. In our meetings with the regulator, we have absolutely discussed this, and in our regular reporting, obviously, we will make sure that everybody is aware of that through to scrutiny. The regulator would not give a view one way or the other, but has been engaged and is confident in the work that we're doing and the way that we're working with them, so they're very comfortable with that. The other thing to say is that this is also a follow-on paper from a paper that came in June with the Minded to decision with further information in it, and in addition, all the performance reporting and the budgetary position is reported on a quarterly basis to Cabinet as well.
Thank you. I'm going to invite the committee now to discuss what we've just heard and whether we have any concerns or not with this proposal. Councillor Baker.
I think we all are concerned for our residents, so please don't take that away from all of us to be concerned about the residents. Also, I wanted to ask you about the staff. We've got 350 staff, you say, that we're going to be tupied over, and we are experienced at tuping. Jane has been involved with bringing 5 councils into 2 and a bit or something, so we do have experience of that. What have you put in place to reassure those staff that they can stay with us and that will be fine? That's the first thing. And the second question is not really a question, it's a statement that if you had been here at the first meeting we had for scrutiny and told us this information then, we possibly would not be at this position that we're in now. But we are well used to being, some of us have been here a long time in councils. We know if you're putting a new programme together that's likely to cost the council millions. We're used to having a programme of costs, etc., of planning of how long this is going to take and what's going to happen. In this situation, we didn't have that. So that is the reason why we were all saying, where's the information? Councillor Hastie was here on his own for the first meeting, and we said, where's the finances? So it was very difficult at that stage. So I do think that some thought needs to be put into the future of how we present this in the first place, because we maybe could have avoided some of this. But I'm pleased that we've got the task and finish groups going forward, because this is not going to be easy. And every stone you pick up will have something underneath it that we didn't know about. So we need to all be aware of that. This is a big challenge, but it is about our staff and our residents. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. So obviously the care for the staff in this is absolutely paramount. So what we've been doing is having regular briefings with them. So every time there's been a cabinet meeting, every time we've got anything that's slightly changed or there's a paper coming out, myself, Jodie, Emma, who's the programme delivery manager, are going into their own weekly team meetings and giving them a briefing, allowing them to ask questions. We have frequently asked questions on the website, so on a web links for them to be able to answer. In addition, at least twice a week, Emma Conway and Pam Whitehouse go down to Westbridge, sit in there. People can make appointments with them, ask them questions. They encourage, they go around, they talk to people. So we're really trying to proactively work with those staff teams so that we can get their questions answered. We've also done a staff survey with MPH. There was a few things that came out of that we're looking at. Again, we can bring that into scrutiny so you can take a look at what the staff said. But they're the main things that you would expect. Where's my base? You know, is my job safe? You know, and some of that, most of that we can answer. For the main delivery elements, of course, you know, we don't have the skill in here to deliver, so absolutely we will need you. That isn't to say that we won't be looking at efficiencies, but again, that we would hope to do that through natural progression like we did with the local government reform.
Chair, if I may also, thank you, Councillor Baker. Yes, I do realise that I'm not trying to take anything away from any of the other councillors in here, that the residents and of the whole of WNC and the housing stock are the most important things to all of you. I'm not saying that so appreciate that. But I would say, just from a small point of view of my own, with the NPH staff, I think the NPH staff were well, they were suitably miffed with me, I think, to put it bluntly. And there was a lot of rebuilding to do with them and a lot of uncertainty. And it started off with the Teams meeting to the whole group, which was not the best way for me to do it. And then since then I've worked with all the departments and gone to meet many of the staff, even been out on the road seeing voids, new developments, electricians, some of the great thing they're doing, some of the dedication that staff have. And that really, I would say, comes to the fore in terms of the coalface workers across the board are extremely dedicated, and the level of expertise, I think, ranges from 2 months up to many of them have got 20 years plus, and some of them have got 37 years, and they're extremely valued. And I've said to them in quite similar sort of size meetings to this, where it's basically an introduction to what they do, an introduction to what I try to do, and then a round-robin questionnaire where they obviously, some questions they want to ask discreetly, and there are obvious questions that they're all asking. But we've had, instead of just going along and shaking hands like a royal visit, we've had real constructive discussions on all aspects of it, and I've learnt over the last 3 months just how the uncertainty is played into their minds, and also, but just how much they want to get this resolved, but also their dedication. And I don't mean that lightly. I don't use it as a bumper sticker. So thank you very much, Councillor Baker, but I also do reiterate that I recognise that there wouldn't be a councillor in this room if they weren't caring about the residents, so I recognise that totally. Thank you, Chair.
Absolutely. I'm sure we'd all agree that the residents are at the heart of everything we want to be doing here. Councillor Chauhan.
Got it right this time. I just wanted to open up by saying that the role of scrutiny is to work cross-party, and it's not about politics. It's about putting our residents first. So I think we all agree when it comes to that point. And I think no one's arguing that we know this has to be brought in-house, but we also need to look at this with our eyes wide open and completely understand that financial risk. Now, Jane, you just mentioned that a legal decision was made and not a financial one. But I think, from a council point of view, we have to look at that risk and the impact that's going to have on our residents from a financial point as well. So, one of the things I do want to say is, the meeting was opened up with legal advice to say we're not going to be talking about whether, we make a decision here or not, but we have to make a decision on whether this goes back to Cabinet. So my point of view is I think this does need to go back to Cabinet, and we need to see the financial details as well, and a contingency plan as well on the risk that the council has to pick up. And I think the other thing that we need to see is, you know, the cost of how much it's going to cost to bring in-house. Like, there's a figure that's been batted around for the 1.6 million. But if there are additional costs, if something goes really badly wrong, what does that look like? Because ultimately this council has to balance a budget as well when it comes to the end of that financial year. So there are multiple risks here. So it's not a point of this has to go back to Cabinet just to play politics. It's to say it has to go back to Cabinet to be scrutinised properly with all of the information so that we can make, you know, a decision that's based on finances as well as looking at the legal position too. Thank you.
Councillor Aldridge, I think. Sorry, Councillor Heaven, you next after that.
Thank you very much. Having been through these sorts of projects and programmes previously, one of the things about transformational change is absolute clarity in terms of planning, in terms of detailed analysis of what's required in terms of impact on people. For me, I didn't see a great deal of that in all the papers previously, and indeed the Cabinet paper that is presented here again today. Not presented, but is made available again today. However, I did raise the issue with Councillor Hastie, and he provided some background information to me, which appears to show that there has been a business case that was put together, and I don't know the timeline of all of this, and indeed an options appraisal document. Now, that gave me much more confidence that there had been a detailed process. However, the challenge is that because I kind of have access to that and others don't, possibly, or maybe they have, I think it's really important that that information is made available to everyone, and as either as part of going back to Cabinet or as part of the task and finish group, because without that it still leaves it quite vulnerable for me in terms of the decision that's being made.
Councillor Heaven.
Thank you. I'm just doing quick maths, as it was quoted about the overwhelming support of the residents to bring MPH in-house. There's 11,500 properties. We got responses from 2,600, of which 60% said they were in favour. So that makes it just over 10% that were overwhelmingly in favour. So, you know, it's not as strong a case as you might think. The alternative option, which was not put to Cabinet or considered, the contract for NPH finishes in 2030. And the alternative option, we had a management programme of improvement, and we could also be replacing the top level of management in MPH, and you could be getting NPH in a much stronger, fitter condition for when 2030 happens, and make the decision then to bring it in-house and have a much better organisation that's more fit for purpose to bring in-house and have a stronger situation than rushing into it headlong now. And that option just wasn't even on the table or even considered. It is an option. And so I am certain that we've not been this scrutiny. We've got to go back to the cabinet and say that your scrutiny committee, which you set up to scrutinise decisions, have not been allowed to do their job properly and have not been able to function adequately. And that's my considered opinion. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, councillors. Coming firstly to sort of Councillor Herrings, and I might duck in with Jane to help on if I have to give her some information, I just might need some help on. Sorry. Councillor Herring, yeah, I mean, I do take on your point of view, but we did look at, all things were considered. All things were offered to everybody in council to come and discuss any other models. I think I got some ideas from everybody, but I didn't get anyone coming forward to say, well, we should stick with this, or we should go with another management. We did get suggestions, should we look at external management in much smaller numbers. I haven't had any compelling argument from anybody to come to me and say you haven't thought of this and you're doing it wrong. I know this will be a hard fight to bring it in and make a success of it, but I absolutely firmly believe this is the right decision. Hard work or no hard work, and we will do the utmost that we can on that. Jane, would you like to add on that one, and then maybe if we can go back to Councillor Chowhands?
Yeah, I think just to add, the point that I made earlier is we now have the regulatory responsibility from April 24. That's one of the main reasons for this review and approach, because the regulator is asking us the questions. They are interested in what we know. They are interested in us being closer to the data and understanding and having that direct assurance. So that would still be there. And it's the reason why a number of ALMOs are being brought in all over the country, notwithstanding that there are issues, of course, when you bring something back in, but that is part of the programme. We want to improve the services for all of our tenants and future tenants, and the way to do that is to look at what's the best compliant pathway and how do we actually get the best safety, quality for homes that we own. Just with regards to the figures as well, can I just pick up with the figures element? We have a contingency. I will share absolutely the business case and the options appraisal with everybody in Scrutiny to make sure you all have that. There is a contingency within that 1.6 million figure as well to ensure that we have room for if there is something that happens. Absolutely happy to hear from anybody once you've had a look at those figures. At the moment, obviously, we've got agreement on that 1.6. If we needed to review it, we of course can.
Chair, if I may?
Yes.
Also, coming back to Councillor Aldridge's comments about the nature of the documents shared, the option appraisal business case as well. The crux of this issue is the fact that the decision made by Cabinet would not have been altered if you'd had access to those numbers or we'd circulated, because all of the numbers in those reports basically condense up to the numbers in the Cabinet paper. They are extensive. They are very, very thorough. I think when Councillor Keeble came in to see us, we're looking at well, huge data sets, but from those data sets comes the answer that was put into Cabinet. So it's a bit like the ingredients of a cake, and the Cabinet paper was the finished article. It's a useless analogy, I grant thee. But I firmly believe, as I say again, that there was nothing that was shown to me by anybody, both officers or councillors or any research or digging around. There was nothing shown to me that I could see, hand on heart, that was the better option for us to pursue. If I had, my recommendation to the administration and to officers would be to explore it and to bring you guys in as well to discuss it. That didn't happen. We moved down this road. I think it's the right road. I'm very happy with the numbers. I'm extremely happy with the officers and the work they've done. And I know we all would agree with the officers that the officers have done a fantastic job. But I can say, from having lived, breathed and eaten it myself for the last 5 months, I've seen nothing, quite frankly, that changes my opinion.
Councillor Owens.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Whenever I'm asked to think about making a decision of whether we keep something or we move forward to something or we delay something, I think about the residents first. Now, coming from a medical background, I think about the impact on health. And I thought about the impact on the health and whether a delay would be beneficial or whether it would be detrimental. And I think from my point of view, I heard the speaker, Jean Lineker, am I right? I heard the exasperation in your voice. And I think we should take note of that exasperation. And we should think about that first of all. Now, Councillor Lister, he talks all the... It
doesn't matter. This is what I'm saying to the councillors.
Thank you. So Councillor Lister talks a lot about figures, but I don't hear the voice of the residents at heart. Sally Keeble. Councillor Keeble talks about in-house not working, out-house not working, but clearly the current model is not working either. We have a survey. It is a limited survey, but it does say it's 6 in 1 favour for returning into the council. I would like to add that this call-in is an attempt to delay essential action following serious failings identified in the management of the council housing. West Northants Council self-referred to the regulator of the social housing after uncovering breaches in safety checks, compliance and governance. The regulator's judgment was clear and the council has already accepted the findings. Bringing Northamptonshire Partnership Homes back in-house is the only viable model that restores full accountability to the elected representatives and puts tenant safety at the central of governance. A delay would only preserve the status quo that has led to the regulatory intervention in the first place. Tenants have faced unacceptable delays, rising complaints and declining confidence in the service. A phased transfer is already developed, costed and published in the Cabinet papers. It strengthens oversight and ensures that all statutory responsibilities under the under the Social Housing Regulation Act are met. The Conservatives' motion to delay does not provide a credible alternative, nor does it address the fundamental failings identified. I cannot support any attempt to prolong a system that has failed residents and has affected their health detrimentally.
Councillor Owen, can I just say that this is supported by more councillors than just the Conservatives, and if we try to keep party politics out of this.
I understand. Grateful. Thank you.
We're going to Councillor Aldridge next.
Thank you. If I can just say, this is about scrutiny and this is about insufficient information for scrutiny to be satisfied. And I guess what I would be saying is that I was very much of the mind that I did not have enough information until I received the information from Councillor Hastie. So can I just say that as quickly as possible, that information needs to be shared with the rest of the scrutiny members so that there is greater comfort and satisfaction that due processes have taken place, because certainly what I have seen in those papers is that maybe I've got a couple of queries, to be fair, because I'd like some more information on some of the areas, but there is enough information there to satisfy some of the concerns that scrutiny members would have at the moment.
Councillor Heaven.
I just want to come back on Councillor Owens there. What have we been doing for the last 18 months or 3 years? That just because it's an arm's length housing management does not mean that we do not have any influence at all. And just if your management here is not managing to get things done through the Elmo, how do we think that we're going to be able to, that same management is going to be more effective if it's brought in-house? There's nothing to stop the management here actually getting things done through the Elmo.
Councillor Chauhan. We are coming to you, Councillor Baker, but there was just a few in front of you.
I think it was just a comment. This committee isn't meant to be political. It's not about fighting against what parties want. It's literally to scrutinise the finances or the decisions and make sure that Cabinet get the right decisions that they want. So just want to, just clear the air when it comes to that. And also say that, I don't think we're arguing about this not coming in-house. We know it has to come in-house, but it's our job as scrutiny members, as councillors, to scrutinise those decisions that are coming forward and to ensure that all that risk is mitigated, especially for our residents, because ultimately it will impact them when it comes to paying taxes.
Councillor Baker.
Thank you. I think that it's quite difficult for me to understand why at the last scrutiny meeting, we as a scrutiny committee, which is not political, asked you for more information. And I apologise for this, but you chose to share that information with Councillor Cable and Councillor Aldridge, but you didn't share it with the scrutiny committee. Now, I understand that you wouldn't want to do that as a recorded, filmed meeting, but you could have sent it to us via email so we were all party to the information that you have chosen to give those two people, because this scrutiny committee is not party to that information, and that was the information we asked for at the scrutiny meeting.
Chair?
Yes.
Thank you, Councillor Baker. Again, bringing oneself back to the argument, the fact that, yes, I take that on board. The information, because it was all condensed from those reports into the Cabinet papers as such, and then also Councillor Aldridge following Council last week, and also Councillor Keeble, who'd approached us. We did spend the time to go through or provide the details and go through the numbers in more detail. I take what is on board about that. Everyone seems to be in agreement that it's the right thing to do. I don't think necessarily the minutiae, and I'm not suggesting the devil's not in the detail, the minutiae would have once again changed the decisions of Cabinet, and also I believe this scrutiny, the fact that it's the right decision and that all known risks have been taken into account. At the last scrutiny committee, forgive me if I'm wrong, but I thought you, Councillor Baker, were asking directly, why is it going to take you so long to bring it back in? So 1 minute it's giddy up and the next minute is wait. Again, I refer back to my belief that we've gone through all the numbers, we've added them up, top, down, left, right, and I firmly believe that it should have, those numbers are included in all the Cabinet paper. I don't know whether, Jane, you have anything to add to that at all?
No, I think obviously we will ensure that we share the options appraisal and the business case. That it's broken down in all of those elements, so you can see exactly what we're referring to. We did a heavy assessment with MPH on the time it would take to run the programme, how many people would be involved, what type of people, so that is all in there. So once we share that, hopefully that will give you the information that you need from there.
Councillor Packer.
Thank you, Chair. I'd just like to point out to everyone that we still have 2 places on the task and finish panel. So if anyone is interested in taking part, please let James know that you're interested. Thank you.
Through you, Chair, just to come back on some of the points that have been made by some of the previous committee members who've spoken. I think fundamentally what the committee is being asked to consider tonight is whether the Cabinet had sufficient information to reach a decision on this. What information scrutiny councillors had, there's obviously a relationship there, but there is a distinction between the two, and ultimately Cabinet are the decision makers. And it's probably also relevant to that to say that it's not a requirement that every decision taken by the Cabinet goes through scrutiny first, and therefore a decision not having been through scrutiny doesn't invalidate it in principle.
I just wanted to add something about the potential task and finish group that this this committee could have, and that is that we would be acting in a monitoring of the Cabinet role, and that in the scoping exercise in the scrutiny review plan that myself, Councillor Packer, some of the officers and James attended that meeting to scope it out. It does say in the outlining evidence section that information on all costs against allocated resources would be considered. So that's another consideration in our discussions. But we're going to go over to Councillor Furman.
Thank you, Madam Chair. We had a very passionate speech from the resident, Jean Lineker, and it's quite rightly so. I'd like to know, please, what are the practical implications in delays do you anticipate for the residents and service delays? And what extra financial risk would happen if we delayed this decision any further? Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Councillor Furman. I don't believe there's not significant financial risk, I don't believe, in if we were to take this back to Cabinet. I think what it would do is look a little bit discombobulated in the way we're doing things when we've had so much time and so much openness about approach. I also think that the thing that would worry me the most is the effect on staff at MPH in terms of who've been waiting for us to start answering their questions, and this now takes it back to just before Christmas, following a rather unpleasant budget, and then going forward into Christmas. I really don't particularly want them to go into Christmas and New Year without having some firm leadership.
Do we have any more points to raise, councillors? No. In that case, I am going to ask if we can have a proposal brought forward by a councillor.
Can I come in? Yeah. Thank you. So to be clear, members, the options that you are considering, or a proposal that we're looking for, is either to refer the matter back to Cabinet or alternatively to take no further action. So at the moment, we're looking for one of those two proposals to come forwards. Thank you.
And if we could, Councillor Furman, if we could have just a brief description of your reason why behind your decision.
Please, could we go forward with the Cabinet's decision? Reason being, I think any further delay, they've already offered us that it will go through scrutiny several times. So I'd like to see the Cabinet's decision go forward, please, and that's what I'd propose.
Second. Okay.
We have an alternative proposal, which is that it goes back to...
We need to vote on
Proposal's been made and seconded. It needs to be voted on.
Has been made and seconded, so we do need to vote on that. Councillor Herring.
I am uncomfortable with Councillor Owens and Councillor Furman being allowed to vote in this because they weren't actually part of the Scrutiny Committee originally, and therefore can't be said to be part of the decision that whether it goes back to the Cabinet or not.
Yeah, no, they are a member of this committee for this evening's purposes, and therefore are able to participate in this one. It's very isolated, like I was saying earlier on, decision, which is whether or not the matter should be referred back or not. So they are entitled to participate.
But the reason that we might want it to go back to Cabinet is because we weren't given the information, and since they weren't actually here, they couldn't have had the information.
And Chair, if I may, again, this is it's not about what information overview and scrutiny have had previously. It's about whether or not this decision that has been made by Cabinet should go back to Cabinet, or whether no further action should be taken. Any information that may have been provided to this committee prior to this call-in is irrelevant for the purposes of just making the call-in decision.
But that's the reason we'd want it to go back to Cabinet, because they didn't allow scrutiny to do their job.
No, the reason you wanted to go back to Cabinet would be because you don't feel that they had sufficient information to make the decision at the time.
we can't know because that information wasn't shared.
And that's something, obviously, that members are then debating. So that's something that you've debated. And obviously what we have now is a motion on the table, a proposal on the table that's been seconded, which is to take no further action and for the decision to stand. So members will vote on that. And if that vote falls, then an alternative proposal can be put forward.
Can I just come in as well? And we have had our discussion, and it has been noted that the business case of options appraisal and also the business case itself will be shared with the scrutiny, and obviously that has been analysed in the June Cabinet report. So we are going to vote now on the proposal. So if I could have a show of hands if you agree with the proposal brought forward by Councillor Furman. Okay. And can I have a show of hands for all those councillors against, please? Councillor Baker, I don't believe you can vote because you're a signatory.
Okay. So that's 2 against, and any abstentions?
Any abstentions? You have one.
So the proposal for no further action is carried.
So the proposal for no further action is carried.
Yes. Yes, I have.
Okay, we're going to move on to item 6 now on the agenda, and that is the housing allocation scheme. For anybody that is following along in the report, it's pages 49 to 106, and I'd like to invite Leslie Armstrong, the Housing Association and Quality Manager, to present the report to us.
I think you've got a team effort, Chair.
So sorry, we've got a team effort. So invite the officers to present to us. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. So apologies, I was just going to do an introduction before passing to Leslie. So many of you will know that we took the function over in terms of allocations. So as West Northamptonshire Council, there were 3 separate functions for allocations. In April 24, we combined the function for all 3 and took the function that was in NPH at the time, Northamptonshire Partnership Homes, back in-house. At that point, we put together an allocations policy. It was based on a culmination of the 3 policies that were in place already. It went through scrutiny. There was lots of conversations around it, but obviously it wasn't tested on the current housing register or with the need or the demand that we have at the moment. So we always said that we would review the policy at a later stage to make sure that we had the correct policy and the right things in place. So that's why we're bringing it to scrutiny now. It will then go through the governance process, but we wanted to bring it to scrutiny first to let you know. I'm going to let Leslie present on the changes. So the existing policy, part of the policy will remain the same. So Leslie's going to just highlight the changes for you, just so you're fully aware on what's different in this current policy.
Hello. I won't keep you very long because obviously I'm aware that we've been here a little while. So I'll go through some of the recommendations that I have proposed. There is 16 of them, but I won't go through all of those, so you can obviously see those in the paper, but I will just pick up on some of them. So I have had a quick look at the numbers today of the housing register, and I can, one of the main things I was asked to look at was the number of people that were in Band A, which is our priority banding. Currently, we have 1,123 applicants who are in Band A. So part of the recommendations that I was looking at this was to see being able to reduce that number, because we were finding that majority of our housing, and that is not just our own housing, but also our affordable RP housing, was going mainly to our Band A's, and those in the lower priority bandings were just not getting rehoused at all, and we're still waiting to find new homes. So some of the changes that I have brought in will have an effect on some of those that are already in Band A. One of those is around properties that are applicants who are in commissioned properties, which is where we provide supported move on, and they are currently placed into Band A. I am proposing that we look at those particular applicants to be moved into a Band B with getting a ready-to-move-on report, because we're finding we're not actually having those ready-to-move-on reports in there for when we're actually looking at moving them. And then if after 12 weeks, should they not have been made that offer, we will then move them up into a Band A, and they keep their original date for the Band B. Some of the other applicants, obviously, that are in Band A are homeless applicants. So we do have in there applicants who are our main duty. So they're the ones that we have actually found to be without a home, and we have given them a main duty. Currently, now the report was done at the 21st of November, we have 240 applicants in that particular Band A category for main duty, but we have 568 who are at a relief decision. So we have either provided them with temporary accommodation or they're able to stay in their current property with the proviso that we are looking at moving them on. I am recommending that we actually reduce that amount and provide them with a Band B. Right, I'm just picking out some of the main ones. Going further down the priority bandings, we're looking at Band D. I'm going to propose that we remove a particular criteria because we have in there applicants who have deliberately worsened their housing situation. So I am proposing or recommending that we remove them from that and actually, in fact, exclude them from the housing register up to 12 months. Then at the end of those 12 months, they will be given that opportunity to reapply, and also that decision as to whether they can come back onto the register would be actually made by myself or any other senior officer in my absence. Bidding is obviously quite a big thing for our applicants to be able to do. Currently, we allow applicants to be able to place bids. When I say bids, they're not putting money down on anything. They're actually choosing where they want to live and ticking a box that that is their property they want to bid for. The minute they have up to 3, I'm recommending that they have up to 5 opportunities to be able to place bids. Whilst we're looking at doing at the allocation policy and doing my research, local authorities neighbouring to us have across their bidding system is up to 5 bids as well. So this will bring us in alignment with our local authorities that are neighbour to us. I'm also proposing that we bring in what's called an auto bidding system, and that we can't currently do with the system that we've got, but hopefully we will be able to do that in the future. This will actually help us to be able to move those applicants who are homeless, owed duty and placed into temporary accommodation. It means that we should be able to move them on faster into more suitable accommodation. We will still be able to give them their choice of area, and they will obviously be moved into properties that are suitable for their own needs. One of the proposals that I put forward to the Housing Improvement Board was actually to consider the income thresholds. So at the moment we have a single flat rate of a threshold of £60,000. So I have been doing some research. I've also been looking at the average rent for 1-bedroom, 2-bedrooms and 3-bedroom properties within West Northamptonshire. And I am proposing to actually bring in 3 thresholds. So that would be for a single applicant to be earning up to £40,000, a single parent up to £50,000, and for couples, the threshold will remain at £60,000. I would also be advising that we do not take into account any passported benefits such as PIP or DLA or attendance allowance. At the minute, we take those into account. Having researched across the neighbouring authorities, that is not, passported benefits are discounted. Currently, our policy allows for the staff to assess the applications once we've received the very last piece of information within 33 calendar days. It was proposed at the Housing Improvement Board that we consider a recent ruling in court, whereas the report between Birmingham City Council, that we actually increase that to 6 weeks or 42 calendar days. And I'd like to close that there. Thank you very much.
Sorry, Chair, could I just add a couple more things? Obviously, we need the allocations policy to be in line with the regulator of social housing standards, so we're making sure that the policy remains with that. And also, there is, at the moment, there is a consultation date in the paper you've been given. That is provisional at the moment. We're not sure whether we're going to have the capacity to be able to do it to that date, so you can just bear with us. It may need to be in January, so we're just working through what's possible and what's not to make sure we get robust consultation. So that date may move.
Thank you. Councillor Heaven.
Thank you. I thought with the homelessness requests that they were given one option and one option only, and if they refused it, we didn't. They weren't offered anything else.
That is still the case. They will still be given that one offer, but they are able to place up to 5 bids on the properties that they choose. Out of those 5 properties, if they are offered one, that is their single and final offer. Currently, they bid on 3 properties, and they are given one offer out of those 3.
Another issue, if I can carry on, was when we went to look at a void property with MPH, the tenants had left it in a terrible state, and it was going to cost tens of thousands to actually bring it back into proper use. But MPH were not pursuing the tenants who'd left for any money, presumably because they thought, well, they'll never get it anyway. However, if there is an undischarged debt on them, it stops them coming round in a circle and claiming themselves as homeless and coming back on the register again, especially, you know, for what you've actually disclosed, that they can't keep doing that, going round the roundabout. I wondered whether that had been enacted or not.
Thank you, Councillor Herring. Yeah, so basically that is in place. However, the new system that we're currently building, the Infinity Housing IT system, looks at total indebtedness for any previous or current tenant. So at this moment in time, if somebody's got debt with us on an account, it sits on the account but doesn't necessarily follow the person. So there's a manual process that needs to happen in the background to understand if there is any debt in relation to the applicant to the housing register. The new system will absolutely avoid any glitches or anything, because the system follows the person, so the total indebtedness of that tenant follows the person and doesn't sit with the property.
And of course, it's not just indebtedness, it's also breaches of tenancy and antisocial behaviour, etc.
Yes, so we've now also established, in partnership with MPH, an eviction panel. So as part of that panel, we understand all of the breaches of tenancy, not just rent arrears. So what we look at is condition of property, if it's deliberate, antisocial behaviour, criminal activity. And as part of that court process is all built into the court application, and at the end of that process, should we be at the point where we do, we take forward the eviction, we ask for the charges as well that link back to things such as property damage.
And then it stops them coming and registering as homeless, and the whole process all starting again.
So they still have the ability to present as homeless, and that would be part of our assessment. And then we've got the 56-day period where we would look at intentionality. So all of that absolute critical casework that goes on in the background is key for the housing officer to make that decision around deliberate acts from the way that they've conducted their tenancies.
Councillor Baker was next.
Thank you. Just to show my ignorance in this, because obviously all of those who know me know I have no understanding of housing at all, but I'm completely at a loss to understand the Band D situation about those who've deliberately worsened their housing situation and you removing this, but the explanation of what happens next is a little confusing to me. If you could just explain that one again. Please, thank you.
Okay, so where we have found that that an applicant has deliberately worsened their situation, a good example is it's a single person, they've moved family or lodgers in on purpose to be able to move into a bigger property. So it's around those circumstances that we would look at. You've done this, you've deliberately worsened your situation to be able to get onto the housing register, and we would actually be saying to them, you are excluded for 12 months. They have got that ability to look for housing elsewhere. If they are a social housing tenant, they can do a mutual exchange with another social housing tenant. They could look for private rented sector properties.
Okay, thank you.
Councillor Owens.
Thank you, Madam Chair. You'll have to excuse me. I'm trying to play catch-up, as this is my first meeting as part of Scrutiny. So if I do ask an obtuse question, I do apologise. Actually, Councillor Baker, the question you answered is exactly the question that was on my mind. So that's one question I don't have to ask you. I just want to come back to income thresholds, because I want to make sure I'm clear. So at the moment, a couple can earn £60,000, which you include if they get any benefits as part of that £60,000 to be able to claim or apply for housing. Right, but what you're saying is you're going to remove the benefits so that it's the £60,000 only. So am I right that if it's under £60,000, they can ask for housing, they can apply for housing, but if it's over 60,000, not including benefits, they won't be able to. Is that correct? Good, thank you for clarifying that. And my final question, again, you mentioned about 248 homeless people. Is that correct? No.
Chair? No, that's not correct. That is a particular number that at the 21st November were given the main duty that the council actually owed to them. So they have looked at the first 56 days to make sure to do all their investigations and everything, and then after those 56 days they then say, yes, you are unintentionally homeless, and therefore we do owe this main duty to you, and you are in priority need, and we therefore need to be looking for somewhere else for you.
Okay, I understand that. Do you assess or look at their background? So my question would be, do you look at, is this a veteran, a former serving member of the armed forces that has become unintentionally homeless? And do you have a percentage of those numbers for me?
So for the homeless team, I am not part of that homeless team. Yeah. But I can find out that number for you with regards to the armed forces.
Yeah.
Sorry.
We'll try and provide you. So there's different things. So, domestic abuse, veterans, care leavers, all of that kind of data is how we look at the pressures, and it also indicates to us the biggest driver of a demand at any one time, and if there's a change. We can provide that for you.
Yeah, I very much love all the data, not just on veterans that you've said. That'd be fantastic. Thank you.
Councillor Aldridge.
Rather like Councillor Baker, I'm equally very new to the housing area. However, my learning curve at the moment is vertical. But I did go through the papers, and it's really positive that this committee is in receipt of this report, and we're able to, as a scrutiny committee, ask questions and possibly ask for further information in some areas. In terms of the overall report, I do welcome the emphasis being placed on the needs of some vulnerable groups or at-risk groups, and that's really positive. So I think the auto bid system will help that, because that makes it a cyclical process. The emphasis on domestic violence victims in terms of where they are housed, I thought was really positive. And then the award of higher bands where there's more than one housing need identified. I think that's really positive as well in terms of the paper. And I do think it's a sensible breakdown of income bands, because a generic 60,000 seemed to be a bit not refined enough. I do, however, have some questions and concerns around the rationale for change and recommendations, which in many areas are about seeking reduced numbers of applicants and or shift in bands. Because there are some issues there, because if the rationale is about reducing the numbers of applicants, then are there going to be some unmet needs out there that are not being catered for? So I just want to pick out some of those, which particularly concern me. The bit around local connection and immediate family local connection, I mean, that has potential detrimental impact on many individuals and families, possibly. So again, homeless applicants, we've talked about that already. But living with a family, single or couple, pregnant or dependent, removed from Band C, I'm kind of thinking, what does that look like? And we've talked about vulnerable applicants already, but the business around rough sleepers who do not wish to make a homeless approach, what happens to that group of people? So I was just wondering, from a newbie person's point of view, could we have a kind of more clarity around there? And I've also got some questions around where I think further information would be really helpful. So could we have a review and assessment of how the recommendations intended to reduce number of applicants and shift of bands will impact on the groups affected? What's likely to be the impact on those groups? Could we have an assessment of impact on our performance data in respect of prevention of homelessness in particular, because our overall data for that area is not good? So what will the impact of this policy be on the overall data? I've spoken about family and local connection. It is central to the health and well-being of many families. So could we have some sort of information on what the likely impact might be, because you've obviously got the numbers there, and what might that look like? And then will any of the policy changes be reviewed in terms of efficiency and impact on local residents at some later stage? So those are my questions.
Through you, Chair, that's okay. So let's start with where we're at in terms of housing need versus housing want. So this policy is very much designed to bring it back to housing need. The reality of the world we live in is that we do not have the housing to house everybody that is applying to us. So we have to make sure that we focus on the most vulnerable. And the changes to the policy are designed to do that, to make sure that we've got the most vulnerable at the centre and we're housing them as a priority. So that's a really important part of what we're doing. Impact on groups, we have done an equalities impact assessment, which we're happy to share with you if you want that information. We also have data on the numbers of people coming to us at the moment in the current bandings, if that would be helpful. We will review it every 3 years from now on. Obviously, this is an early review because we've now got the housing register data and we can see how it's working, but we will review it every 3 years. If, however, we were coming across the landscape changes or issues change, we will of course proactively work with the policy to make sure it's suiting what we need. I think one of the things to say as housing is that we're constantly reviewing what demand is doing, the type of demand. It changes with legislation, renters' rights bills change, Section 21. There's lots of changes that happen all the time, so we're always minded to that.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Herring.
It was a rather more brutal version of Councillor Aldridge to say, if you implement these changes, how many do you think you'll reduce the Band A by?
That is what I was asking. Thank you for clarifying that.
Okay, so currently we don't have those figures because obviously you've got to reassess with the policy. It is, however, fundamentally the right thing to do in terms of need, because we need to make sure we're focused on those higher priority. If everybody, I mean, obviously it'll go out to consultation, people will have a chance to feed back on things they might be concerned about. We've done an equalities impact assessment. If we got down the line of implementation and found that there was a certain group being inadvertently impacted, we would of course review the policy at that point. We can make minor amendments under delegation anyway if there's something that's really, or we can bring it back through the process if it was something larger. So we're never going to leave a policy in place that is fundamentally detrimentally impacting a vulnerable group in the wrong way.
You must have a feel for it, though. I mean, 50, 100. You must have had a quick skim through your list of the aids and thought.
As you know, Councillor Herring, I work on facts, so no is the answer to that. I don't have a figure that I would be prepared to give in here that would be accurate enough for what I'd want to do. We can go away and have a look. Obviously, we have at the moment currently 1,100 people in Band A. And that will be on a rolling basis because obviously people are getting housed all the time. Since August 24, we've only housed 1,222 people. So the difference between the figures that we have in that banding and the availability of stock that is coming up are stark. So we need to make the changes to make sure we're getting to those vulnerable people.
Do you know how many properties you've got that are sticking? I remember that there were certain properties that people just didn't bid for. And I just wondered how many you think you're carrying.
So we've actually very proactively worked on the void situation. So at the moment we may have one or two that are sticking mainly because of work that we need to do with them, but we're working to move stuff to temporary accommodation if it's not going well as a permanent solution. So we are trying to actively use every empty property in the best possible way. We have a weekly voids meeting to make sure that any property that is empty is tackled for the reasoning. So I would hope that it wouldn't be very many at this point, and there shouldn't be any really with the process that we're following now.
And that's the same with our partners as well, because do you remember there were those two bungalows that were sitting, Councillor Frost was really frustrated that were sitting there in a village and nobody was doing anything with them.
Yeah, so they're not part of the voids meeting because that's just with MPH, but there is a constant conversation between Jodie and the leads, particularly at Futures and Amplius, so we're making sure we're having those conversations. We would hope they wouldn't want property sitting empty because actually it affects their finances, but we are working with them where they can't let properties the same way for temporary accommodation for us because they have a duty to support us with our temporary accommodation need as well. So there's a lot of proactive work going on ensuring we don't have empty properties sitting around.
I'll find out whether they're still empty.
Please do, yeah, please do, and so if they are, let me know straight away and we'll pick it up.
It is an issue in the housing strategy. It's a glaring issue, the empty properties. Councillor Packer.
Thank you, Chair. Two questions. How do these bans compare to our neighbours, and which benefits are you excluding or including, whichever one is easier? As the budget, we have seen a large uplift in some benefits.
Thank you, Councillor Packer. So obviously our immediate neighbour, Northamptonshire, are also just at the moment going through a massive consultation on their allocations policy as well. So I've taken into consideration their proposed one. I've also looked at some of the bigger authorities that we are neighbours to, and the bans that I am proposing are almost in line with everybody else that are our immediate neighbours. I'm sorry, what was your second question? Oh, the benefits. So the benefits that I'm proposing to disregard are the passported ones. Is that the question you were? So that is personal independence payment, which used to be the old disability living allowance. So I'm proposing to ignore those, and also the attendance allowance as well will be ignored. Just them.
Could you clarify? I thought attendance allowance wasn't means tested.
They're not, that's why it's been passported, and that's the same for PIP as well. It's not means tested, so it's the benefits that are not means tested. So child benefit will be in there, but that's not taken into account anyway. So yeah.
Thank you. Do we have any more points? I think we've raised a fair few issues here that we'd like to have more information come back to us, but I will pass over to James, who will summarise for us.
So thank you, Chair. I mean, as has been highlighted, this has been brought to scrutiny ahead of a decision being taken, well, ahead of a consultation and then a decision being taken. So this is a real opportunity for scrutiny to have some pre-decision input to identify if there are any comments it wishes to make on the proposals, whether there's anything it thinks is good, whether there is anything it's concerned about. Clearly, there have been a number of points raised by individual councillors, whether there's anything from those that the committee wants to translate as into a conclusion by the committee as a whole. And again, scrutiny can be seen as about saying what's going wrong, but it's just as valid an outcome for scrutiny to say we think this is the right thing to do. We have confidence in what's being proposed on a particular issue. And yeah, there were various requests for further information as well. So the background categories of people who become intentionally homeless, further information about how the proposed approach and about with the aim of reducing applications and changing bans will affect groups in real life. Further information on the impacts of prevention of homelessness, and further on the impact of changes to the family and local connection area. But yeah, I really would emphasise if there's anything that the committee wants to say about what the proposals presented to you tonight, whether identifying something you think that is the right approach, or something you have concerns about, whether something that may represent a risk, then this is your opportunity to do so.
Thank you, James. Over to you, Jane.
Yes, sorry, I just want to say thank you all for your input so far, and happy to take any further input from you. I would also encourage you all to attend. There's a members' session in the courtroom up at the Guildhall on the 15th of December. What time is it, Jodie? Sorry. 4 o'clock. So I would encourage you all to attend those and get other members to attend as well to input, so we get maximum feedback on it.
Councillor Baker.
I think those of us who've been here a while have been through many machinations of this plan. So I think we've actually got to a stage where I think it looks quite good. So I think that there's a few things that we needed some extra information on, but I think personally I feel that we've got to a good place with this now. And I think unless anybody else has got a different view, that would be something I would like to put forward. Thank you.
Okay, does anybody have any other points, any other councillors?
Chair.
Yes, Councillor Hasty.
Thank you, Chair. I just wanted to say Leslie's done with the team a fantastic job in implementing this and bringing this forward. It is, to me, sometimes I look at the dashboard and how it all works, and it's like, how the hell do they make sense out of this? But somehow they do. I just wanted to commend Leslie and her team for excellent work, and also Jodie and Leslie when it comes to dealing with members' inquiries when there have been issues, how quickly they get on top of them and try and resolve them on the residents' behalf. So thank you very much.
Yes, I'd like to echo that to you, Leslie, and to Jane, and to all the officers. I do thank you as a committee for your hard work, and I do know personally as a councillor that I have had 2 cases where you've really helped very quickly. So thank you very much, and thank you for your time tonight.
So through you, Chair, is the committee as a whole supportive of Councillor Baker's point that it supports the broad direction being taken?
Can we just have a yay or nay?
There's
yes.
General assent,
yes,
I think.
General assent is that we are happy, and we just request that further information. Thank you. Councillor Owen.
Could I just say that obviously it's my first time at this committee. It's very difficult for me to make a decision on something like this, having only just arrived. I mean, it looks on the face of it that it is a good proposal that you've done with the right recommendations, but obviously not having the formal background, I don't think it'd be appropriate for me to make any comment at this time or any vote, unfortunately.
Chair?
Yes, Charlie.
Come along on the 15th, and Leslie is always available to give you a very thorough grounding into the education of how this works.
Yes, we do have that great opportunity to go along on the 15th to that members workshop and to have more information. Right, and thank you once again. We're going to move on to item 8, which is the youth offer. Oh, sorry, we're going to move on to item 7. Pardon me, I'm skipping on too much. We're going to move on to item 7, the 0 to 19 services in West Northamptonshire. It's a presentation, yeah.
Hello, firstly, I'm David Johns, I'm Director of Public Health. I'm just going to, I'll try and take us through this as quickly as possible. The remit was to provide a bit of an overview of 0 to 19 service, and David's come along from NHFT to sort of take us through the service and give you a bit of a flavour for what it is. And as we go through, I'd welcome afterwards that conversation with the chair about where there are lines of inquiry, how we sort of coordinate with health scrutiny and think about where best to sort of place some of those lines of inquiry in the future. If we just move on to the next slide, the bit that I will just briefly highlight is we're going to focus in on the service. And I really just wanted to just flag the idea that, and zoom out just for a second before we do that, which is the idea that often good health is built in homes, schools, and neighbourhoods as much as it is in clinic rooms and with our colleagues in the service. So I just really wanted to highlight that those building blocks of health are really important to us alongside the work that we do in the services and how the service links in with signposting people to support, to interact with those and make sure that those foundations are strong. The next couple of slides are a brief summary for you on some of the health issues that affect and impact our children and young people and their parents. Largely, I'll just really bring your attention to smoking rates at time of delivery, which are still higher, despite reducing over the last few years, still higher than the England average. We see dental decay, which is still higher than the England average as well. And then we also have higher rates of pregnant women attending, women attending sort of perinatal mental health services. And the next slide reiterates that point that children and people's mental health is definitely a key factor for us to consider as we develop our services. So if you keep on moving through. This slide just showcases the breadth of what we do in public health around children and people and maternity. We work closely with our NHS colleagues and the maternity system to think about maternity care. We work with schools locally to think about how we develop healthy schools and support. We commission services around mental health and wellbeing, but also around oral health and supporting our vulnerable children and young people get the resources they need in terms of toothpaste, toothbrushes, etc. As well as taking a whole system approach to how we talk about healthy weight and physical activity. Now, the 0 to 19 service contains two of the prescribed functions within of the public health grant, notably the 0 to 5 element and the National Childhood Measurement Programme for measuring children's weight. And this just gives you a little bit of an overview, but we're going to delve into the detail of what the 0 to 19 service does, so we can just move past that one. And then finally, this slide here, you can take away and have a look at, but it just provides you that assurance about the process that has taken place since the disaggregation of services in the North and West, and the process that went through in terms of commissioning the 0 to 19 service and working in partnership to create a partnership agreement for the new service, which came into place on the 1st of April this year. So that's my whistle-stop tour of the background, but I'll pass over to David to talk you through the service and give you a flavour of what it's about.
Lovely, thank you very much. And as David says, to keep it simple, I'm David Williams. I'm Group Director of Strategy and Partnerships at Northamptonshire Healthcare NHS Foundation Trust. So we'll take you through the 0 to 19 model. And as David said at the beginning, the aim of this is to try and give you a flavour. I am conscious you've been here for a couple of hours. I may go through the slides a bit too fast, but it's about then exploring what are any key lines of inquiry or things you'd like to delve into deeper at another time. So I think it's really important just to start with looking at the 0 to 19 service model and the things that we're looking at. Thrive is a really important phrase for both us and the council in supporting people and communities to move forward. It's really important to think about the fact that over someone's early years, there are 8 universal contacts. As money gets tight and people think about services, it's really simple to sometimes go, actually, what we'll do is we won't have a service that's universal and it's not available to everybody. We would shrink it down and think about how we triage it. And I'd say we miss a point if we do that. Having a universal service means that we have an opportunity to be able to help a family at 8 different points in their early years, help them get the support, and you don't always know who needs support and who's struggling to help. So by being able to provide something across the whole of the community, it's really important. So those are the 8 universal contacts. The outcome of each of those universal contacts might be we give you some advice, thank you very much, you're in there. We can refer you into neighbourhood support services, some of which are run by West Northants Council. There's some really good partnership, some of which are run by voluntary and community groups. We might give you more help and get some more help to solve some problems, or it could even be about getting some risk support. So those 4 different tiers and levels of support can come through and work through from any of those 8 universal contacts. So in terms of Lots of New model, it's worth, as David's just mentioned, we've developed this together, sitting down and saying, actually, it makes sense to have a partnership approach. So the mechanism for doing that between local authorities and the NHS is the Section 75 agreement. And what we've looked at doing is saying, how do we take all of this, but also integrate it with the family hubs where they are, but if there aren't family hubs, how do we still take that forward and work it through? And how do we bring this together with the youth offer, the family help strategy, our SEND work, giving children best start in life, and so on. So that's the principles of the new model about how do we deliver stuff all wrapped in together. In terms of where it goes, so I'll go through these fairly quickly. There's a couple of bits I want to pick up later on in the slides. But a 0 to 5 offer includes the antenatal screening, 6 to 8 week reviews, but also we're starting to build in digital contacts. So if you're there and at home, you're in a really busy, different period of your life, actually a digital 4-month contact to ask you how things are can often be an awful lot easier, and a way of actually being able to have a longer conversation with people. So the digital stuff is really important. Prepping for school readiness is incredibly important, and if you think about the work you'll be involved in with schools, making sure that young children are ready for school is a really important part of engaging and helping them support into their learning. And then other interventions and other support that are in there. For 5 to 11-year-olds, National Child Measurement Programme, David touched on some of those things earlier, but really supporting people to understand how are they developing and how do they get support. Emotion coaching, an important part of work, and understanding and building resilience for families, really understanding how to manage emotions and how to be a parent and reacting in the right way to those things and how to support people to learn. That links into well-being. And again, lots of key bits in there, but worth just picking up on this slide. That specific offer for electively home-educated people. And we're now doing that in so much more collaboration with West Northants. So we're connecting that with your services together and making a really big difference that way. And I'll share an example with you in a moment. And then we go through to the 11 to 19, sorry. So again, here you're looking at young people becoming more responsible for their own health and therefore taking even more of a responsibility to co-produce it with us, to develop it, and you're moving and shifting from some clinical-led services to some other services led by youth workers, family hubs, with clinical support and clinical oversight and taking things forward. So that's the sort of range of the 3 different ages and the offers. If we go on to the next slide, I think we wanted to touch about thriving families and to talk really about how do we provide intensive support to people who need it and help for. So you might be a young parent and you might be needing more help and understanding. You could be a parent in care or a care leaver. There could be complex family relationships happening. Being able to have a thriving families pathway where we're all working together to drive through really improvements is really important to us. And there's a couple of examples coming up that I'll pick up and just try and explain a bit more about why this is important. So this slide and the next 2 are case study examples of how have people found the service and ways of working things through. And this first one is from one of our school nurses who's talking about the experience that they had at the Toaster Family Hub and really connecting everything together and thinking about how services work there. Having a one-stop shop where people will go makes the NHS more accessible. It doesn't make it quite as a stigma for going to the NHS to see, and actually those of you who've been to Toaster Family Hub will know how welcoming it is and how a range of different services that are there. So a really positive experience from people using the Toaster Family Hub. The next one I wanted to take you on to was just an example of the importance of why having a universal service is there. And this comes from a health visitor who was working with a mum during that 2-year development review. And the mum confided during that, because she felt safe, that she wanted to confide that she was a victim of domestic abuse. And it was a significant case. So this is happening in West Northamptonshire. The health visitor and a colleague had to secure themselves, the mum and the baby, safely inside the room they were working in, because the father wanted to come in from the outside, having realised what was happening. Police were called, and mum and the young child were removed out of this area immediately by the police and kept safe. And things like that are the important bits of providing somebody with an opportunity to talk to a health professional, and that universal element potentially wouldn't have happened, and we were able to do that. So thinking about how do we support people establish that, and that it's the empathy and respect that health visitor had established was really good. So I think there's an example of some of the stuff happening. The next example is about an individual who happened to be home educated. And the anxiety and challenges about going outside of the home and going to other places were significant. So parents had identified that there was an issue and that they wanted to come to have a health appointment because of their child's anxiety. Having got the individual into the car, the challenge was then getting the individual out of the car. The anxiety levels were absolutely huge. Here was a moment of going to see a health professional for something they didn't feel comfortable with. And as you can imagine, and particularly if you've ever been a parent, if your child doesn't want to get out of a car, there aren't a huge amount of strategies that you've got left to enable that to happen. So mum left their their teenager in the car and came into the clinic for a conversation, and our staff were quite happy to go and sit in the car. And so the assessment was done in the car with the young person. that changed the dynamics and gave that young person the ability to understand that actually potentially going into the building wasn't a really big problem, wouldn't be a problem. And so for all their other clinic appointments, they've now come into the building, they've developed a therapeutic relationship with the school nurse, and things are moving forward. So we've shared those 3 examples for you today to help you understand a little bit more about the complexity, the work that's happening, and the range of support that we provide, ways of talking things through. I've just got a couple of other slides then to touch on. Thought it was worth just sharing a little bit with you about our performance. So our performance is there and how we compare to the national indicators. So you've got 3 red areas where we're slightly below the national average, 2 yellow areas where we're on the national average, and 3 greens where we're above the national average. Doesn't matter whether we're green, red or amber, we're continuing to work with colleagues to see how we can improve, develop services, working things through and taking things forward. The next couple of slides also reflect on our performance here in Northamptonshire. So clearly the early data bits will be for Northamptonshire rather than West Northamptonshire. But here's our performance of ways of working. There's this slide, and then the next slide just provides a little summary. So there's lots to do. We keep working with everybody to take stuff forward, but we do have breastfeeding rates currently the highest they've ever been. We've got real significant increases in 2.5 and 12 months checks, recognising it's still below the national average. And the number of children who are now reaching a good level of development at 2.5 years is the highest it's ever been. New baby reviews, I think, are really important, and those 6 to 8 week checks remain really, really important, particularly for helping new mums understanding a routine that has just probably completely changed for them. So there's a very brief summary of the report. I've just a couple of other slides as we go through, James. So this is the last one, and I just wanted to say it's really important that there is a clinical focus when you need a clinical focus. All of it's centred on the family. But there are opportunities for us to do things with your services, with voluntary and community groups. And where we can do that and do stuff differently, we're doing that now and evolving things. Increasingly, both yourselves and us are very aware of the complexity and the needs of increasing needs for children with special educational needs and disabilities. So we're working together to do that. Where we've got other services that would support people, because 0 to 19 is a universal service, it can often mean it holds people until other services can then take them in and refer to them. So they'll be providing information, advice, guidance, support to people while they're waiting for other bits of assessment. So one of our commitments is about how do we speed up some of those assessment times in order to take the pressure off 0 to 19. And I think the last little bit we went on there, and David and I were talking just before this meeting, but we think we're moving things forward in that way. But the MASH is the multi-agency safeguarding hub for anybody who's unaware, but there's supporting different organisations feeding into that. One of the challenges has been making sure that health feeds into it, because not every safeguarding issue is a 0 to 19 service has safeguarding issues. Sometimes there can be other things. And the 0 to 19 team have been picking up quite a bit of that on behalf of everybody else. So making sure that that's funded and that we're supporting looked after children properly, again, takes the pressure off 0 to 19, meaning there's more we can do for a universal service. So they're the challenges. I've tried to go through it as fast as I possibly can because I'm really conscious you're tight on time.
Thank you. Councillor Hevin, I think, picked everybody to the post.
Thank you. And I'm sure this won't be a surprise that I'm going to mention it, because I've mentioned it many times before, and I'm sure the situation's not improved much. But just for the benefit of the newer councillors, when we started at West Northants, it was evident that we have a significantly higher rate than the national average of suicide and self-harm in this cohort, and that at the time the CAMS service that was supposed to allow young people with mental health problems be referred to had a 2-year waiting list and was effectively closed, because they were changing the criteria all the time for doctors to be able to refer into them, because they just couldn't cope with the backlog. So I'm going to ask, you obviously seem to be doing a great deal for babies and under 5s, but what have we managed to do to try and unblock the support that the young people need with their mental health? Thank you.
Thank you. I think support to young people for mental health, I have come probably about a year ago to one of the scrutiny meetings and provided a bit of an update and a work through on that. In terms of, there's a whole range of support. If we look at being proactive and thinking about the 0 to 19 service, the school nursing wellbeing service is doing a really big good focus on wellbeing. We also have mental health support teams in schools who are supporting and working things through. And you can see examples, as I went through today, about importance of supporting things. So the 0 to 19 service is able to look and pick up early amounts of support for people's well-being. If people need a referral through to child adolescent mental health services, then they do go through. The waiting time isn't the time that you're quoting. I haven't bought all of, my laptop has just run out of battery power, so I haven't got all of the current performance data and a way of working things through. But the other bit I would also just want to say is that the focus on CAMS and wellbeing is incredibly important to us. We have, in Northamptonshire, so in NHFT, we've taken on the lead for supporting all of the inpatient units. So if you are, as a young person, mentally unwell and need to go into an inpatient hospital for your mental illness, we are the coordinator of that across the whole of the East Midlands. And last week, the Health Service Journal awarded NHFT it's called the Provider Collaborative of the Year across the NHS because of the improvements it has made in CAMS and the ways of working. So there is significant progress.
And do you think that the levels of suicide and self-harm are now more in line, at least with the national average? And is there a danger that by taking that lead on the inpatient for the whole of Leicestershire and can't remember who else are involved, takes the focus off actually looking after our own population with the lower level of need?
So I'd say completely the opposite. So by saving money and delivering inpatient services differently, in CAMS we talk about support that happens in communities that moves up through tiers to intense inpatient units. So I would describe stuff as tier 1 being very information, advice, guidance, tier 2, tier 3 and tier 4 being inpatient units. By the transformations we've done in our tier 4 inpatient units, we've invested more into the community. So we have additional services that are provided in Northamptonshire that we are investing into.
And the levels of suicide and self-harm?
I don't have the levels of suicide and self-harm figures of the children in Northamptonshire and comparing it to the country in front of me at the moment, so I'm not going to comment today on something that I don't have in front of me.
Chairman, could we ask for a future meeting if we could be given that information?
Yes, we can. We can certainly request that information to come back to the Scrutiny Committee.
Can I just for a point of just clarification around the idea that so the 0 to 19 service and CAMS service are two separate services. They work closely together. Just wanted to just make sure that was clarified and clear.
Thank you. Councillor Owens.
Yes, thank you for that report. It was really detailed. As somebody who works within the NHS and sees patients, particularly young patients between 0 and 19, my concern is, and I've spoken to David about this at length, is whenever we're thinking about children and all these safeguards that are there and all these opportunities to involve them, it's about the actual parents taking responsibility and having engagement. And what do we do if the parents, or how are we looking after the children if the parents are not engaging? Now, we have an issue with child obesity across the country. Northampton is no exception. Particularly, you know, when I am seeing patients, I'm concerned that we've got this universal 8 contacts, but how are we ensured, bearing in mind the pressures on the NHS at the moment, that, and knowing the limited number of health visitors, the limited number of nursery nurses to be able to do these, and I have personally heard of these either not happening or being delayed, that these 8 universal contacts are actually happening. We then think about the children moving on to school, and we're getting, I've heard of reports of children going to school and they're not nappy trained, they're not, toilet trained, they're not able to use utensils at school when they arrive. And then when we pick up with the obesity, because we have got child obesity, again, I find myself, you've got parents now who won't engage, who won't allow their child to be weighed. And as clinicians, we've got no ability to force them to be weighed. So how do we measure whether actually the facts and figures that we've got are actually accurate compared to the number of people that don't engage with the models that you're talking about? On top of that, I would ask, bearing in mind with the new NHS plan, the ICBs, that's the integrated care boards, are having to push 50% cuts to staff. We know there's 18,000 redundancies. There's also mutually agreed resignations. Can I ask, has there been any clinical staff, like the safeguarding lead in Northampton, is their post secure, or is that post being removed, or are there any other clinicians that in those specific roles that are in 0 to 19 that are being removed? And I'm not talking about administrative staff, I'm talking about clinical staff, and what would be the impact on the service if there was less clinical staff to do that service? So I think that's my questions so far. If you're able to answer some of those, please.
Yep. Okay. So I'll try and draw through a couple of different bits and themes and talk some stuff through. So if we were sitting there, past the start of the question talked about families that don't engage and what do we do and how do we work some stuff through. So I think if we're looking at figures and performance and understanding some stuff just about families that do and don't engage, then our 6 to 8 week check reaches over 90% of the families who've got a 6 to 8 year old child. So, many families do engage in ways of working stuff through. As you go through the universal contacts, that first slide where I talked about the different outcomes that you can get might be about some people just getting some advice and guidance. For our Thriving Families pathway, where we can see people need more support, then there is a greater engagement with them. So there's a greater offer of level about helping support the family, helping take people through. So there's a way of sort of tackling the engagement and ways of working stuff through by helping people work some stuff through. So that, I think, is really important. In terms of just change on the system, the other bit I'd say, and then a more general point about where do we going, as part of the agreement we've worked through with West Northants is about, we did have a service that was fairly much nearly everybody clinically led an NHS professional. Now, we've looked at the way we want to develop the service together, and some of that can be done by youth work. Youth work provides a different approach. It gives a different opportunity and a different way of working. So we are going through a model at the moment where we are looking at when we need it to be clinically led and we need clinical professionals like school nurses involved, when can it be about well-being support that can be a youth offer. And actually by bringing the two together, you get a richer, different offer. So there are some changes happening, but this is about how do we get the right model for the right people. The last bit I would say to yourself as a counsellor from West Northants is getting someone school ready, helping a family thrive, doing everything is everybody, is us. I smiled because you kept talking about we, and it reminded me that I would come back to you all and say it is a we, it is us as a local authority, but it's us as a community, it's us as schools, it's us as the NHS, all trying to wrap this around together to give families the best start we possibly can. Because a school will struggle if a young person coming to school needs support and isn't toilet trained. So we all have got the interest in how we help and build our communities.
Thank you. I think it goes back to the education of families, and that's partly what happens in the family hubs, and also the positive impact into families, and the the education and having the consistency in the people around the families so that they can build relevant relationships. And we go over to Councillor Aldridge. But can I ask that we keep our comments? I am very conscious of time, and I know we have been here a long time because of the call-in and what we have to get through. There is some more items on the agenda. We may have to cut the agenda short, which I really don't want to do. But can I just ask us all to be quite concise in our comments and debate? Thank you. Councillor Aldridge.
Thank you for the presentation. It would be really useful for us to have those slides because there was quite a lot of information there and I was struggling to get it all into my head. So if we could have that. I've got a couple of questions really. One is hard to reach families and groups. Is that something that you pay particular attention to, and how, how do you go about addressing that? Because we know that it isn't, even with universal provision, the engagement can be variable, and certainly for targeted provision later on, it can also be variable. So there's an issue around those families, those children who are harder to reach than others. And then the other question that I had was around referrals. So is there scope and potential for self-referral at all within the services that are on offer? I'll stop there because I've got a whole list of other questions as well.
Lovely, thank you. I'll just reply on the referrals for a moment. Self-referrals possible. The other bit I'd just say, particularly for older young people, is we do operate a thing called Chat Health, which provides a text-based messaging service so that if you think we're all on our phones all of the time, or at least many young people are, and the challenge about asking for help when you're not sure what to ask, actually just texting a message, talking to a school nurse is available 5 days a week, and support is there. So there is self-referral and other ways to do it. I'm conscious you'll only ever hear from me. So Louisa is an employee working for both West Northants Council and for NHFT, helping us really work together between the two. And Louisa is very well set up to describe a bit about how we reach some other families that you've mentioned.
Thank you. Yeah, so I'm Louisa Russell. I'm the Assistant Director for 0 to 19 Services. And so I think what you asked also touched on, Councillor Owens, what you asked about people that don't engage and hard to reach. So I guess to give some assurance, we have very clear pathways and protocols around people that don't come for an appointment. So, we would be absolutely triaging the clinical record, looking at everything we know about them. And if we think that there is anything other than universal level of need, we don't give up. We persist and we persist and persist until we get them in some way, shape or form. So eventually we pretty much get good engagement, but sometimes that takes quite a lot of persistence. In terms of knowing who our hard to reach are, part of and we're doing an action plan around trying to improve our 2.5-year review uptake, and that's one of our key actions, is to drill down much deeper than we've ever done before to really understand exactly who isn't coming for an appointment. So that's a piece of work we're doing right now. We've just been given the data that we're about to analyse. It will help us drill down to, are there particular postcodes, are there particular ethnic groups, are there particular language spoken of people who aren't coming. And once we've done that analysis, we've already primed our co-production and participation group to help us go into some of those communities and those specific cohorts to understand with them what are the barriers, why is it that they don't want to come to the appointments, and then really try and work with them and with family hubs, using that as a potentially non-threatening vehicle to help potentially bring people in. So quite an active piece of work around that at the moment. So I hope that might answer your question.
Councillor Baker.
I'll be quick, I promise. I think that we've now got in place a really good 0 to 5 offer, which is working really well. My concern is actually sort of past that stage, 11 plus upwards, because we do know that the highest number of referrals we're getting into MASH and the Children's Trust at the moment are teenagers, 12, 13, 14-year-olds. So I think we all need to focus on perhaps providing more for them, that they're hard to reach. They don't want to talk to anybody, do they, teenagers? But we need to look at that, because that is where the high numbers of referrals coming into the Children's Trust are at the moment. So do you have any plans to enhance? I know I'm persuading Melanie to have more plans and Catherine to have more plans to reach that area, but involving our voluntary sector, just to add, because we've got big plans in the voluntary sector to do that too. So they're all pointing at you.
No, I'll quickly come back and then I'm bringing Lucia for some of the detail of it, but we're of the same mind in the idea that services like these need to constantly think about transforming how they meet the needs of the populations that they serve. And that focus on 11 to 19-year-olds has been a particular focus since before I joined a couple of months ago, in terms of the aspect of that, which is us designing a service for 11 to 19-year-olds is no use really. It's about how do we involve 11 to 19-year-olds in the design of that service, and that's what's been happening over the last few months to sort of develop the new model for 11 to 19. Anything particularly you want to add, Louise, on that?
I think a couple of things I'd pick up on is the Year 6 and the Year 11 universal screening, which are part of the 8 contacts, are brand new. So they didn't exist in the old contract, in the old world. So, and they'll start later on this academic year, but they're to do exactly what you've said, Councillor Baker, to make sure that we think about young people at those key transition points. We know when young people move from primary to secondary, and then it sort of when they get Year 11 into like adulthood, they can be really tricky times. And so we've built those universal screening opportunities as brand new contacts to help us at that point to identify any previously unknown or unmet health needs, so we can be really proactive in meeting them, rather than perhaps those Year 6s get to Year 7 and crisis escalates and then we need to intervene in a crisis situation. So I think the focus on that older age group through those new universal digital screening contacts. And I think the beauty of and one of the things I'm really enjoying in a shared role across WNC and NHFT has been able to wrap some of these things together. So thinking about what Mel's going to talk about next in terms of the developing youth offer strategy and the 11 to 19 service, wrapping all that together and thinking about how does it all come together in an integrated service for young people, I think is a real opportunity that lies ahead of us.
It's like there's a natural segue to me.
Thank you. Yes, that nicely... Again, a request for more information, and that nicely leads us on to you, Melanie.
Okay, thank you. Have we got the slides up? Thank you. Right, I am really conscious of time. Sorry, it's working now. Just want to go quite quickly through these slides because it's the end slide that I'd like us to have more of a conversation on, if that's okay. Right, if we can go on to the next one then, please, James. So we've just been talking about the youth offer. We've just been talking about 11 to 19. We've just been talking about the family hubs, and as Louisa said, they all do come together. So again, you'll get these slides. So I just wanted to start off by giving some context and background. So you'll see on there that we had a peer review from the National Youth Agency in September 24, which has really informed what we're doing going forward. We've developed, and many of you will already know, Young Northants in partnership with the voluntary sector. We've recruited 20 young ambassadors rather. We've also got a youth worker who's within WNC that's sort of coordinating that work, and we've also recruited members of Youth Parliament. And if you haven't seen our James that was in Parliament, I'm hoping you've all seen it. If not, we'll make sure you see it because it is absolutely amazing in terms of how he presented in Parliament. Nationally, some of you may be aware in terms of the youth offer strategy, and we're really looking to align what we know is going to come out of that national youth offer strategy with what we want to do locally. And it is, you know, the things that we always talk about, whether it be family hubs, it's about communities and building the resilience within our communities. And I think it is important to recognise, and I think we all recognise, our communities are very different. So one size definitely does not fit all. I'm going to come on to, in a moment, the vision and priorities, and I'll talk a bit about how we've come to those vision and priorities. And as you'll be aware, we are currently developing our youth offer strategy, so it's by no way finished, and that's obviously why we're coming to scrutiny this evening. So if we can go on to the next one. So we had, again, this just covers some of the, list isn't exhaustive, by the way, it's just given a high level in terms of the voices of young people. So we did our youth engagement survey, and that was in April 24. We've done our children and young people's voice, so the My Life story, which was over the summer of 24 as well. Louisa and David have spoken about the 11 to 19 health and wellbeing service model and some of that consultation and some of the work that's been done with young people. And I really do echo what Louisa said, and I think we're really lucky to have that joint role, because I can definitely see some of the improvements that we've made in terms of the offer for children and young people, because we do have that better connection between health and local authority. And that's not to say it wasn't there before, I just think it makes it easier to navigate some of the boundaries that we often see within organisations. I think some of the work we're really proud of, which definitely informed the Family Help Strategy, was the local area partnership summits. So there were summits in each of the areas, and we had a lot of professionals and children that were involved in those, and that very much drove what we needed to do in terms of our Family Help Strategy. And then, as you'll be aware, our Family Help Strategy, which was recently signed off and is now operational. And we had our first launch event of the strategy today, which went really well as well, so that was really good. And then obviously, I say obviously, but it's not always so obvious, we're also using the data that we've got from national studies and also drilling down locally into our data, which, just to give some examples, that could be youth offending, that could be prevention. As Councillor Baker has mentioned, we know that we have quite a high number of teenagers that are referred into our multi-agency safeguarding hub, and we also know that the majority of our looked after children that enter care are those teenage years, and we know which postcodes those children originate from. So I suppose what I'm trying to illustrate is we're using a whole host of data to understand our communities and look at what we need in each of the localities. So current vision, and this was a co-produced vision. It does what it says on the tin. So to support all children and young people in West Northamptonshire to achieve their full potential, and through co-production, and I really want to emphasise the co-production. We did that very successfully with our Family Help Strategy, and we've done it very successfully with our SEND strategy, and that is very much the ethos that we have with this strategy. And it's to empower and support personal and social development, and we've already spoken about some of that. And I think most importantly is ensuring that successful transition to adulthood. And within the SEND area, we talk about preparation for adulthood constantly, and preparation for adulthood starts from zero. And I think, you know, that's what we're trying to do. And what you will see as we develop our strategy is that connection across 0 to 19, but equally in terms of that Best Start in Life offer and how that links through into the youth offer. So we've got 5 priorities, and these priorities have been pulled together through the co-production work that we've done, both in relation to our Family Help Strategy and also in relation to the involvement and engagement that we've had with young people. I won't go into these in too much detail, and you'll know why I'm not doing that when we get to the last slide. So priority 1 is about delivering against the outcome framework. And again, the connection that we've got in terms of the 0 to 19 model, we need to have one outcome framework, because I think there's a risk, and sadly I think it's probably happened before, we have multiple outcome frameworks and we never deliver on any of them. So what we're really clear on is that we need one outcome framework that is understood, that we can measure ourselves against. Goes without saying, we want to integrate our youth offer into our communities and family help offer, and we have started to do that through our family help offer already. And you know, there's things such as Teen Clinic that we've got running in Daventry, and that's a health clinic, and we want to look at what do we know works and how do we make sure that we roll that out in the communities that need it. I think priority 3 is an important one as well. So that's about improving the awareness and accessibility of the youth offer. And I think with accessibility, it's also about communication. And every day I hear of a new youth provision that's in West Northampton. So I think one of our biggest challenges is how do we know what's already out there, and do we know what's already out there? And when we do, and if we do, how do we make sure that we communicate that effectively? And that's similar to some of the work we're doing around family help and family hubs. Priority for, I want to say this is just as this one's even more important, but they're all important, which is why they're all priorities. So I think better coordination of services. We often hear that people don't know about services. So I had an email today that they didn't know about family hubs, and I actually know that the person that was communicating and asking that knew about family hubs because they've been involved in a presentation. So I think there is something for us in terms of how do we get that message out more widely, and how do we make sure that sticks? Because I think sometimes people forget, and that's about, is it a digital offer? What sort of offer do we need to have? And I think, again, what's really important, and it goes back to outcomes, is how do we make sure that we're having the right impact for our young people? And that isn't about what we as adults think is the right impact for young people. It's about what are young people telling us. And then the final priority is really making sure, and it goes back to co-production, that's embedding the local offer plan and developing our support locally. And that's developing leadership roles within our communities, and also making sure that we've got resilience in the communities. And what comes from that is a strong voice, and that's making sure that we involve young people within the decision making. So this is why I skirted over those, because these are the next steps. So apologies for going through that really quickly, but I wanted to get onto this one. So what we've done to date is we've done lots of engagement, whether it be through some of the work we've done with Family Help Strategy. We've done engagement with our Youth Council. I know some of you were involved in the cake and debate that we had last week. So we think we're really at the stage now where we've got a draft where we've pulled together all of the information that we've been told, but we need to get some scrutiny input into this. So I did speak to Councillor Adkins about a proposal that we get a working group together to really look at those 4 points. Obviously we'll share the draft strategy with you, because we really want more input. Do you think these are the right priorities? You know your communities, your scrutiny members, looking at if there are any barriers or issues that you feel that we haven't covered, and making sure, and I think I said this at a launch event earlier for the Family Help Strategy, there's no point writing a strategy if you haven't got a delivery plan and you know what you're trying to measure. So what we really want to do is make sure that we've covered off the key actions, but equally we start to think about how do we deliver that and how do we monitor that. And I think probably the most critical question for us is, what do we want that to look like in 5 years' time? And I know what I want it to look like in 5 years' time, but I think we need to get wider views on that, really. And equally that will be the voices of children and young people as well. So that's the whistle-stop tour. So I'm happy to take any questions or comments, and hopefully commitment to the next steps.
Thank you. Thank you, Melanie. Councillor Aldridge.
Thank you so much. That was really helpful. And as far as the priorities are concerned, they are appropriate and are ambitious. And right and proper that we should move forward with those 5 areas. My question is around, and you mentioned it yourself, it's about delivery planning. And it's about making sure that we have a framework for delivery that leads to real impact. And that requires a complete assessment of having an overview of the totality of provision now, and mapping that out across the West Northamptonshire, because it's going to be variable. I'm very aware that in certain parts there's a lot of active youth work and engagement going on. In other parts there's less so, for a whole variety of reasons. It may be because it's rural areas, it may be because inner city areas, it may be for a whole variety of reasons. So I think, you know, in trying to put together a delivery plan, I think that complete overview of totality of provision now to identify gaps, but also to learn from best practice. So I think that's really important. The second one is around tangible outcomes. So really thinking hard about that, because how do we go about making some judgments? Because you were saying impact. So what does that look like in reality when it comes to the youth strategy? The third one is around place. You know, where do these activities take place? Who's involved in the delivery? Who's involved in all the other processes around people, costs, safeguarding issues, and so on and so forth. So that's really, really critical. And then the biggie in the end has got to be funding, because there is no way in which those 5 priorities can be delivered without a clear funding framework and resources being allocated. And that has got to be part and parcel of the strategy, because strategies which are just about vision and aspirations and ambitions and priorities without funding, without resources, it's not really worth the paper it's written on. You know, I mean, I don't mean that in a negative or in a kind of crude way, but I have seen too many strategies in my professional life where I actually go and look at what are the outcomes. It's very difficult to see these outcomes. So I think, you know, certainly a working group to explore those kinds of areas is going to be really important.
Thank you. Shall I come back on those points? Yeah, so you'll be pleased to know we are doing a gap analysis and mapping. It's proving probably more difficult than we thought maybe. I don't know if we thought it would be difficult. And I think the reason for that is that there are so many groups within West Northamptonshire. So although we've started to collate that and we understand the areas they're in, I know I know that from an award ceremony that you were there, Councillor Aldridge. Some of those groups and organisations I didn't know existed. And there is an argument about, does the council need to know about all of these groups? But I think that's how we link in with the voluntary sector. So we're definitely looking at that. In terms of tangible outcomes, 100% agree. And when I was presenting, I was saying, I agree with you, there's no point having a strategy. We have to have a delivery plan. And as part of our family help strategy, we are working with the University of Northampton in terms of outcomes and impact. And I would like us to do something similar with the youth offer and the youth strategy, because we need to understand the outcomes and impact. Agree again in terms of what you were saying about place, and I think in terms of outcomes, and this is obviously a question that we all need to think about, but if I think about two very simple positive outcomes, reducing our number of children that aren't in education, employment and training, and we're already starting to do that with some of the contracts that we've got, but I think we need to look at that further. Looking at apprenticeships, supported internships, so if we're thinking about that post-18, it's about going into university, whatever it might be. So I think there's lots of tangible things that we can look at. We've also done, you might be pleased to know, we've already looked at the costings of what we actually spend currently as a council on youth. So we've started pulling that together, and that links back into what outcomes are we getting for that cost. That's going to be a much bigger piece of work, and I think it's likely to form part of the actual delivery plan for the strategy, because what I don't want to hold up is the delivery of the strategy, because we're still trying to do little bits over here, because we actually just need to get on with it and make sure that that's part of the delivery plan. So I think the funding element is definitely a challenge because of the general funding. However, I'm quietly hopeful that with the announcements that are coming out, that there will be some money for youth, and it's about how do we use that in the most impactful way, and that's what the strategy should be driving. The other thing which I didn't add on actually around governance, we do have a youth offer board that I chair, and it will be exactly the same as what we do with the family help strategy. There'll be a strategy, a delivery plan, work stream, themes, and then as we do in the family help strategy, we have reports that come into that board to make sure that we're monitoring progress and impact. So I think that was all of your questions. Thank you.
Councillor Hevin.
the main place that you get to be able to have contact with this cohort is through the schools, and you haven't actually mentioned them yet. And so the idea of collaboration between the schools, the local LAPs, the family hub, but I echo Councillor Aldridge that there's got to be some funding attached to this, even if it is just a pot of money where that's grant funded, where people can bid and you can actually assess as to whether they will produce what you want against your strategy. And the other thing I wanted to ask was the ambassadors that you chose, or I don't know how they were chosen or self-chosen, are the rural areas well represented as well as the towns and cities?
In terms of your last question, I will confirm, but yes, I believe they are in terms of that representation, but I will double check that because I'm not 100% certain.
The considerations are very different, obviously, with the people in the villages as opposed to those who can access services.
Yeah. I think that goes back to and again, we've done it with our family help strategy. It's about, we've got very different demographics. So that's why one of the things that I highlighted is we can't have a one size fits all for West Northants. We have different communities, hard to reach communities. So I think that's definitely what we're looking at. I think the grant funding is really interesting. I was having a conversation earlier today, actually, at the family help launch, because when we talk about families, we're talking children, we're talking youth, so I tend to look at it in the whole as opposed to two separates. There's lots of opportunities for voluntary sector, and I think, you know, I'm preempting what's going to come out of the delivery plan now, but we do need to look at how do we support voluntary sector to access grants, and how do we make sure that what they're accessing links in with what we know in terms of our demographics, so that we're getting the right services in. And just to highlight as well, I hadn't mentioned schools, hadn't really mentioned any partners, but again, just to give some reassurance, we have police representatives, we have school representatives. So again, I'm talking family help and youth offer. And we've got a chief superintendent that attends our family help board, which is just amazing. And also he connects in with our youth justice board, because what we're trying to look at is from a health, education, voluntary sector point of view, police point of view. We've got representatives from early years, primary, secondary. It's about how do we bring all of that expertise and knowledge together to share those ideas. And I think a good example of that was at the launch today. Some of the ideas that came from partners that attended our launch event today were really brilliant. So absolutely. And
I think what you were saying about having a grant and being able to bid is not just the known voluntary sector that have got organisations and admin, but it could actually be from a group of young people themselves who want to set up a netball team meeting or a football or whatever else that they decide that they want. And if you can just give that seed funding to enable things to go ahead, so they can rent the pitch or rent the room or whatever, it would make a big difference. So it could be quite small amounts of money. We should allow them to, like you said, you've engaged with them, allow them to actually access the funds as well with their own ideas.
I think we should, we'll take two more questions just for the sake of time, and I know I am going to invite Councillor Harris to come forward and have a quick question.
Yeah, thank you for indulging me. It's a statement rather than a question. I certainly welcome the organisation of a working group. We seem to be creating lots of working groups, but I think it's really important because it's the best way to get cross-party collaboration and get under the skin of some of these issues. You and I had a very brief conversation at the cake and debate session, which we probably should pick up and pursue at a different occasion, but I'm interested to understand how we can embed this in communities, and I really mean embed this in communities. And the brief conversation that we had, just to share it, was around parishes, and parishes may have other opportunities to seek funding that we wouldn't do as a unitary authority. I speak obviously as the ward councillor for Brixworth, which is a big parish, a big community, and I would love nothing more than try and have some sort of embedded youth representation as a youth worker or something of that nature that can be on the ground, the eyes and the ears, and coordinate and work very closely with our communities. And that would also be outreach to rural villages and communities as well as a bit of a hub. And the point you make about lapse is very interesting, because the local isn't quite so local anymore as it was in the definition of LAP descriptions, and that concerns me a little bit, because now we're covering quite broad areas. The area that, for instance, my ward will be in, and Councillor Ward's area, includes Daventry as a whole now. So it's a big chunky area, and I think we risk losing the localism bit around this. So I hope that we can explore that through the working groups too. Thank you, Chair.
Do we have yes?
Sorry, if I just come back on that. I think you're preempting one of my actions on the delivery plan. One of the areas I think is how we do need to engage more with parish councils, because I think when we were talking about gap analysis, they're the key to our gap analysis, or to understand what's there, the communities and what we need to build. So that is in my head for the delivery plan. So yeah, really glad that you made that point as well. Thank you.
Do we have any other councillors with another point? No. Okay. Can I ask you to sum this up, Mr. James?
Well, so through you, Chair, the offer has been made, and I think happily accepted to set up a group to do some further scrutiny on this. It would be useful to get more of an understanding of what, who, and when. So, are we talking about a working group of the whole committee, in effect, as was done with the meeting on the 30th of October on the housing side, or are we talking about a smaller group that might meet several times rather than just once?
Over to you.
Thank you. My preference would be that I think the whole committee it would be really helpful to have the whole committee, and maybe 2 sessions, because I think the first session, and obviously we'll share the draft strategy before that, the first session would be to sort of talk about it and go through those questions. And then I think the second session would be where we can bring back the updated strategy so that it can be reviewed again. What I really want to do is I don't want to rush this strategy. I want to make sure that we do it properly, but equally I want to get it done at the same time. So, there's a fine balance between how long we take to do this piece of work, because it's the delivery plan for me that is much more important than the strategy.
And through you, Chair, what would be the broad timescale for those possibly 2 meetings? So how quickly would it be envisaged that the first one take place?
I mean, I think, to be realistic, we're probably not going to get anything in before Christmas, given that we're the beginning, even though I would like that. But I think that to get diaries together is probably going to be a challenge. So maybe the start of January, and then maybe one at the start of February. I'd like it to align with cabinet dates as well, if possible.
We're all happy with that? Yeah. Yeah. Okay, so we're going to move on to item 9, which is the review of our committee work programme, and on pages 107 to 116.
Thank you, Chair. So this presents the committee's overall work programme, the latest version of that, for you to review and to update, add to, subtract from as you see necessary, to ensure that the committee's overall efforts are focused on the areas they can make most impact. So just to highlight on that, the next formal committee meeting is due to be on the 27th of January, and that is intended to very much focus on the topic of support for care leavers and different aspects of that. In addition, the work programme presents 2 proposals for more in-depth pieces of scrutiny work. So The first one of those on page 111 to 113 is the proposal arising from the workshop session on in-housing Northamptonshire Partnership Homes, which has been referred to numerous times earlier in today's meeting, which is to set up a task and finish panel essentially to monitor the progression of that in-housing, to make sure that everything is going on track and to provide input on risks and challenges as that proceeds. So that is presented hopefully for approval by the committee, given it's something that members previously said they wanted to do. Where there is still areas to fill in on that is particularly which members are going to be involved. So the suggestion is that the task and finish panel consists of 5 members. We've had expressions of interest about being involved in that previously from Councillor Baker and Councillor Furman, but it's open to other committee members to put their hats in the ring, and then for the committee to agree the terms of reference for that piece of work as presented, but subject to any additions or changes you want to make. And then secondly, there is the proposal for a scrutiny review put forward by Councillor Keeble on the issue of getting social housing in West Northants up to the decent home standard. That was presented to the committee in October, and the committee took the view that it didn't want to reach a conclusion on that until after the session on the 30th of October on in-housing MPH. So that having taken place, it's now brought back to the committee for you to consider and reach a view on. I think what I would highlight on that is that the points that were made to the committee about this as a potential topic for scrutiny at the committee meetings in October still apply. That as a topic for scrutiny, this would be something that the council is already doing a significant piece of corporate work on, and it's subject to oversight by the regulator for social housing. So therefore there would be a significant question about what scrutiny of this topic would add value, and how far the risk that it would detract from the or duplicate the work that's already being done. So as I say, Chair, report presents the overview of the work programme and then 2 proposals for more specific pieces of work for consideration by the committee. Happy to take any questions.
Are there any questions?
I've just got a statement, really. As the task and finish group, as a way forward, seems to make a lot more sense, and I would envisage that task and finish group would also be looking at the social housing reaching decent home standards. So I see the second one as a bit of a duplication and unnecessary. So if we're looking at establishing a task and finish group, then let's just stick to that and not overburden the members to be involved in 2 sets of activities.
Councillor Heaven.
It's possible that you could actually incorporate the 2, or at least expand slightly the scope of the first one to allow it to look at the progress to achieving decent homes as part of the transition period. It wouldn't be unreasonable, I don't think.
I wouldn't want to blur the lines too much, Chair, but I think, yeah, if the first piece of work is looking at progress with in-housing NPH and, so reports on position against risks in the project risk register, well, how the in-housing is equipping the service to do what it needs to do would kind of be where the crossover is, for example.
I believe that we'll have access to much financial data, so that will possibly be covered, the decent home standards. So I don't think that's an unreasonable proposal at this stage. How do the other committee members feel about that? And Councillor Aldridge, in saying that we should just concentrate on the task and finish group, I think that is the preferable way to go. But how do we all? So that's agreed. Okay. We do, however, need 2 more members, and if we have...
Sorry, I think it's 3, Chair, because we've got Councillor Baker and Councillor Furman. If there's a third, then please tell me who that is.
Sorry, I was counting like the chair in, but we've got 5, haven't we? Yes. So we do still need 3 members, but obviously if you can have a think about that and let myself and James know.
Okay. I mean, I'd quite like to propose Councillor Ware for the group.
Okay. Well, I think what I'd like to do is to see, first of all, if there are members, give the option to the members in the committee, and of course, if nobody, if the councillors in this committee do not want to take that up, then we will be open to other councillors. Councillor Aldridge. Councillor Herring.
I'm happy to volunteer, but you might not want me.
We can highlight it after the meeting to all non-executive councillors and then reach a view about who's involved, because it's a task and finish panel. It doesn't have to be politically balanced, but as with all groups like this, you'd want something that equipped it to do a good job, and that might include members from different political groups. It could include members from different areas of the district. So we don't have to finalise that now, given that not all of the members of the committee are still present in any case.
That's very true.
Okay.
That's very true.
I think that's it on the work programme.
So there is no other urgent business, so I can conclude the meeting finishing at 9:04. Thank you, everybody.